Really, there is no concept of time at all. My island, the side hall of the central tower. Iida frowned, looked at the time aside, and said angrily, a group of unorganized and undisciplined guys. Beside him, Kaminari, General and Hong have all arrived, but only these few people have arrived. Li Tian and Lu Jiyu didn't come, and the girls didn't even come. Ding. Sorry. Green Valley ran out of the elevator with an apologetic expression on his face, and then he saw the 4 lonely people in front of him. Huh? Li Tian and the girls haven't arrived yet. Lu Jiyu was taken aback. He remembered that Li Tian had left half an hour before him. Moreover, Li Tian's speed would be late. Ding. Another elevator came up, and Uraraka walked out of it with a face of embarrassment. Sorry everyone, I was accidentally late. Oh. Seeing Uraraka in a dress, Kaminari and Putao suddenly became excited. Before everyone could react, the sound of the elevator sounded one after another. Li Tian and Yi Yin, Yaoyorozu Wan and Jiro stepped out of the elevator at the same time, and then, they all wanted to say something, but then, they didn't say anything. Looking at each other, they couldn't help but smile helplessly. Wow. The 3 girls appeared on the stage at the same time, and Kaminari and Putao became more and more excited. Especially Yi Yin. Because he needs to attend the reception, it is obviously impolite to float in the air in a dress, so he controls his appearance. With short black hair and fair skin that hasn't seen the sun for many years, she is a cute and beautiful girl. Apart from Li Tian and the girls, this was almost the first time for the others to see Yi Yin's true face. As for Li Tian, although he was dressed in a red suit and a golden tie, even the girls didn't give him a second look, let alone the boys who were like animals. Ding. The elevator door opened, and the last person, Melissa, trotted out. Everyone, didn't you go to the venue first? The reception is about to start. It's over. My heart is beating fast. Me too, I feel like I can't take it anymore. What should I do? Seeing Melissa trotting over, Kaminari and Putao moaned while holding their hearts. What to do with love? Jiro, who had just been ridiculed by the 2 for looking like a female killer, complained coldly. How's it going? Carl asked, looking at the slovenly middle-aged man beside him. It's ready, and I can rewrite the control of my island's security defense system at any time, the sloppy middle-aged man said confidently. Very good. Carl nodded. Marvin, Ian, you 2 will take him directly to the control room on the top floor of the central tower later. Okay. Clear. The 2 nodded solemnly. Of course they knew that the importance of the seemingly slovenly middle-aged man they brought with them was not necessarily as important to this operation as even half of their squad combined. Others, when I gave the order, all rushed into the hall to prevent those professional hero from violently injuring people, and arrested a few researchers from my island and sent them to the 200th floor. The most high-tech storage room on my island is also there, Carl solemnly ordered. Understood. Everyone responded in a low voice. Although it is only a villain organization, they are all elites among the elites, each of them is strong, and they refer to the management model of the army and mercenaries, with a clear division of labor. The strength of a whole team is not inferior to that of many first-class professional hero firms. Finally check the time, the action will start at 8:30 minutes and seconds, Carl said in a low voice. After finishing speaking, everyone including himself looked down at his watch, only the sloppy middle-aged man with 10 faces didn't care. The central tower, the banquet hall on the 2nd floor, professional hero from all over the world, officials from various countries, heads of consortiums and scientists from my island gather here to participate in the welcome reception before the My Island Expo. In the huge banquet hall, guests held their glasses of wine and came and went. From time to time, people they knew or didn't know clinked glasses and chatted with each other. The atmosphere was very harmonious. Among the crowd, it's hard to say who was the most popular, but one of them, without a doubt, is the Nobel Prize winner of Bell Quirks, Dr. David Hurd. In fact, the guy who was supposed to be one of the most popular, maybe even dropped that one, is here. It's a pity. All Might is currently in David's private laboratory, receiving the results of treatment from the most advanced city in the world. Although I dare not say that the stomach and other internal organs that were removed by All Might will be restored, but it is not impossible to keep the current situation from getting worse, or even start to improve. Dear guests and friends, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to participate in this My Island Expo. Here, I wish you all the best of luck and success. You can find what you want at the expo. The host of the banquet is obviously not a serious character, but a warm-hearted person mixed with jokes. Next, the stage is handed over to us. Dr. David heard, "Welcome everyone." David Hilder on the side was already ready, and when his name was read on the stage, he had already stepped onto the stage. Standing in front of a kind of guest, Dr. David is about to speak. However, at this moment, beep beep, the urgent siren sounded in the banquet hall. Is this the highest defense security alarm for my island? Standing on the stage, David looked dazed and at a loss. How is this going? How could my island's highest defense alarm be activated? Emergency, warning, my island security system emergency announcement. We have received a report from the security system that someone has placed an explosive device at the expo. The reason is unknown. Now my island will fully activate the highest alert mode in all areas. Please residents and tourists return to their accommodation immediately. Anyone who is still on the street after 10 minutes will be arrested. Repeat. Boom. The door of the banquet was kicked open, and a group of villains in full armor walked into the banquet hall. Each villain aimed at the guests with a micro-punch in their hand. Although there are quirks, there is a limit to the use of things like quirks, which can be solved with gun bullets, so it takes a lot of effort to use quirks. You heard me right. The security system has been controlled by our people. We have blocked the TV, computer and mobile phone signals on Jiangzhou Island, so don't think too much about asking for help. Carl stepped into the banquet hall, looking arrogantly at the hundreds of people in the banquet hall, and the professional hero present here. I warn you that it is best not to act rashly, otherwise. Carl hooked his fingers. The surrounding screens of the banquet hall immediately displayed images of the entire my island. Little guys who were supposed to be security robots ran around the streets with dangerous red lights, or stayed in crowded streets, subways, or even docks and other places. Our brothers don't care, we die, but the innocent people on this island may suffer extremely tragic results because of your reckless actions. Carl grinned ferociously, and said with an arrogant and provocative face. Is there anyone who moves? Professional hero. Don't pretend to be dead, move. In the banquet hall, the group of professional hero all gritted their teeth and looked at these dozens of people. If it weren't for the innocent people and the dignitaries of various countries and financial group envoys who were pointed at guns, they would randomly draw 1/10 of them. Can easily abuse this group of villain. Despicable. Someone growled once or twice in a low voice. Carl didn't get angry at all, but still had a smile on his face. Since you don't move, then I will move myself. Snapped. With a snap of the fingers, all the big brothers at the banquet were buried deep in the cannon barrel, and the shells of the capture net were fired one after another, tightly entangled the group of people, making it difficult to break free. And remember, Carl just flowed into the crowd, unscrupulously walked to the forefront of the stage under the fierce eyes of a group of professional hero. Dr. David. You've known him for a long time, come with me, Carl grinned. Who are you? Dr. David was still calm at this time, and let out a low voice. Who are we? Carl chuckled, we are your future parents. Since you don't want to move, then I will help you parents. As the sound fell, a catching net directly wrapped Dr. David tightly, and then, holding Dr. David in his hand, Carl hummed a little tune and walked out of the banquet hall to the elevator in the central tower. And at this time, in the side hall of the central tower, a group of students were a little confused by the sound of the broadcast and the changes around them, and they didn't understand why. Only Li Tian looked speechless. It really happened. I am a crow's mouth, or I am a black emperor. Li Tian looked up at the ceiling, unable to control himself. What should Shang-Ri do? Of course, it's not because they reacted too slowly, it's just that they didn't expect my island to be invaded for a while, and the broadcast only mentioned the installation of a bomb device, and didn't mention the villain, so it's just Songshi for a while. No, it's just the news of the discovery of the bomb. How could the highest defense system of my island be activated? On the side, Melissa, who was familiar with my island, was the first to notice the abnormality. Everyone, cheer up, it seems that something happened, Li Tian said in a deep voice, reminding everyone. And the few people are not stupid, so they reacted quickly. They looked at each other, and everyone's vigilance was raised to the highest level. Yi Yin even activated quirks directly, hiding himself and his clothes. The way it should be. Listening to the sound of sirens echoing over my island, Li Tian felt an incomparable headache. Originally, he thought that Dr. David wouldn't make such a crazy choice after the Battle of God and Wild happened 2 full months earlier than All Might's retirement, but should it be said that it is my English world? Ouchu is so crazy. Li Tian's head started to move, thinking quickly. In the original plot, Dr. David's final verdict did not appear, but the joint villain invaded my island. In addition to snatching the invention materials, it also threatened tens of thousands of people on the entire island, and losses and injuries caused by fierce fighting in the central tower. Such a serious accident, even if Dr. David was deceived by his subordinates, no matter how he thought about it, he would not easily get over it. At the very least, it is impossible for scientists to continue working as gloriously as before. No country or organization will choose a person who colludes with outsiders to rob their own research results as a scientist, no matter how talented the other party is. But Li Tian can't let this happen. Not to mention anything else, Li Tian couldn't let this happen just because of Melissa's face. A father colluding with villain will seriously affect Melissa's future and learning environment. He also thought that after Melissa had completed her studies, he would suddenly recruit this talented young lady. At this time, what Li Tian didn't know was that the crazy European chef he complained about, Dr. David Carl, was also suffering from a headache at this time, and was being grabbed by the villain like a piece of chicken, and he couldn't believe it. The island will be invaded by villain, and even the security defense system will be reversely manipulated by villain. To the elevator on the 200th floor. Who are you? Dr. David asked in a deep voice. Doctor, you don't need to know what we are, you just need to be obedient. Carl sneered sullenly. I remember, Dr. David. Your family is also on this island. If you accidentally cause turmoil and accidental injury, if so, don't blame us. If you dare to touch their hairs and hairs, I will fight you hard. Dr. David's eyes turned red, and he glared at several villain and shouted violently. Hey, whether they are safe or not depends not on me, but on you, Dr. David. Carl laughed a couple of times, but didn't talk, just hit. Just need to find the 7 inches and kill it with one blow. The number of times is too many, but it will cause a rebound. Relying on the advanced technology of my island, it is only 200 floors. Soon, the elevator ding-dong and arrived at the top floor of the central tower. Whether it is the control room of the central tower or the storage rooms for various technological inventions, they are all located here. Layer. Grabbing Dr. David, the moment Carl stepped out of the elevator, his footsteps froze, and he looked at the 2 people not far from the elevator entrance with a frown. His face suddenly turned cold. Why are you here? Didn't we agree that we will do our own thing? Carl frowned and said in a deep voice. Isn't this an obvious thing? League of Villains, Corey chuckled. I know when I come here, is there any purpose other than those advanced inventions? And the most advanced invention of my island, but are they all hidden on the 200 floors? Are you? Want to pick peaches? Carl sneered, loosened Dr. David to his side, and made a fighting posture. Dream. You guys. Your Excellency, Carl, don't be impulsive. Our 2 forces are now discussing the alliance. Don't hurt the peace of both parties because of some small things. Kurogiri, who was standing behind Corey, took a step forward and said slightly. HMPH, you also know that we are cooperating. After you come in, each of you will be in charge of your own business. This is your request for cooperation. Why, seeing how powerful we are now, are you going to ask us for help again? Carl looked at KK sarcastically. Ri and Kurogiri. It's too ugly to say help. It should be a win-win cooperation, Corey said with a chuckle. There are very few people who can take things from the storage room on the top floor, and there are only a few people in my island who have the authority, and this guy is the only one nearby. Carl pointed at David next to him and grinned. Don't talk about you, no one else has been caught yet. It was from the information on my island that Curry found this out, so before the action, their team did not carry out any preparatory actions. All the preparations for all actions, as if they had been prepared for them a long time ago, are at your fingertips, but efficiency. Corey said unhurriedly, as far as I know, the safekeeping room of my island is connected to the network here separately, except for authorized persons. There is no way to safely open the storage room, but do you think that you are holding Dr. David hostage, and he will really go full speed to help you take the best things as quickly as possible? This. Carl frowned. Indeed, there are tens of thousands of advanced technologies in the top storage room of my island, some of which are extremely precious, and although some are undoubtedly advanced technologies, they may be useless after they get them. Carl couldn't help but glanced at Dr. David behind him. Dr. David, who was captured by another person, instinctively avoided Carl's gaze, but he reacted instantly and glared at him again, but obviously, it was too late, and the subconscious reaction just now undoubtedly told Carl. That's what he thought. Asshole. Carl cursed in his heart, but there was nothing he could do, because he had no way of judging whether Dr. David deliberately delayed when he took the things. At this point, he can assign the other party to pick up the goods at will. 100 secrets 1 sparse, 100 secrets 1 sparse. They made the plan very detailed, but they ignored this point. How about it? Do you want to cooperate? I have a person here who knows Dr. David very well, and even has a certain understanding of the storage room. With him, both efficiency and quality will definitely improve. It's higher than if you go straight there. Corey said with a chuckle. Conditions. Carl said with a cold face. The first thing to be taken from the storage room must be something we want. After that, the things you take away, all the data backups will be handed over to us, Corey said with a chuckle. Impossible. Carl directly rejected Corey's lion with a big mouth. His face was livid. It doesn't matter if I give you the first item, but it is absolutely impossible to give you all the data backups of other products. If he agreed to this kind of condition, then this action would be blatantly helping the League of Villains to work. Then the product information of the first 10 items is backed up. Corey said indifferently, their goal this time is only one, other things. More are just superfluous, besides. After the Silver Fox takes it, isn't it equivalent to taking it away from the League of Villains? Corey grinned softly inwardly. Yes. Carl thought for a while, and then said in a deep voice with an ugly face. Okay. Black mist. Corey yelled. Kurogiri didn't speak, his body collapsed in an instant, and a purple-black portal appeared here, and then, a fat man with a kind face came out. Sam. Dr. David looked at the figure walking out with disbelief. When the other party said that there was a person who knew him very well, and even knew about the storage room, Dr. David began to think about it, but he never imagined that the person who came out was actually a dozen or so people beside him. Assistant of the Year, Sam. Sam walked out of the portal, gave Dr. David a submissive look, and then stood respectfully behind Corey. Why? Why did you betray? Dr. David looked at Sam standing behind Villain, and questioned with an angry and puzzled expression. On the other hand, the villain who watched the scene in front of them were not organized, but watched the show with great interest. Brothers turned against each other, and the scene of cannibalism was their favorite among this group of people. Even Carl, seeing Dr. David's reaction, knew that the people from the League of Villains were not lying. The person who came out was definitely someone who knew Dr. David very well. It was Doctor, you betrayed me first. Sam looked at the villain around him and didn't stop him, but he boldly replied, that's an invention that we've put our heart and soul into for more than 10 years, honor, wealth and status, they should all belong to us, but doctor, you were so easily suspended by them from our research. 10 years. How many more than 10 years are left in my life, so I don't want to waste any more. I don't want the honor and status, but at least I want to get the money, Sam said, his face there is also a hint of ferocity on the face. You. Dr. David looked at Sam, who was very strange in front of him, and he still couldn't believe it. The good assistant and good brother who had been by his side for more than 10 years had turned into such an appearance. He really wanted to ask, has he really been harsh on the other party's money these years? As one of the chief scientists of my island, he has countless invention patents, and among them, in addition to continuing to invest in research, a large part of the benefits are distributed to these old brothers. Besides, stop researching that matter as a last resort. David's eyes flashed a touch of sadness. He did not say this sentence, it has already related to the top research secret of my island, even if it is death, it will can't say it. Okay. That's the end of the farce, hurry up and start to act. Maybe he sensed that Dr. David was delaying time, and although he was confident that their actions would be strict this time, there would be no accidents, but he still interrupted the two talked and shouted sharply. Dr. David opened his mouth to say something, but was picked up by the villain behind him, and walked into the central control room with it. In the control room, apart from them, there were also the sloppy middle-aged man who manipulated the security system, and the two villain as guards. Okay. Hurry up and open the door of the storage room. Otherwise, I don't guarantee that that street on this island will become a purgatory, Carl said coldly. Damn it. Dr. David felt a chill in his heart, gritted his teeth and walked towards the storage room, but he kept praying in his heart. It doesn't matter who it is, stop this group of guys quickly. The villain have captured the central station and controlled the security system. Now everyone on the island is their hostage. The professional hero and the police are also under strict surveillance and cannot do anything. With an ugly face, Jiro said the information she had summarized from the gossip she had captured in the banquet hall, which made everyone present look ugly. It's not that different from the original book, that is. Before we solve the security problem, we can't solve all those guys. Li Tian thought about it, and looked up at the ceiling, above. Everyone, this situation should be handled by the professional hero. After all, it is illegal for us who do not have a hero license to use quirks to fight villain without permission, Iida said, frowning and said in a deep voice. For Iida, who values the rules the most, This is the first reaction at this time. I also agree with Iida-san. After all, we are all just students. The affairs here are not something that our students can interfere with at all, Yaoyorozu Wan also said. We also agree that we should go out immediately to find rescuers. We are now on the 3rd floor, so we can escape easily. Putao also raised her hand and said. No, the defense system of the central station of my island is very high. Even if it is almost the same as the Tartarus where criminals are held, it doesn't matter in the fire escape here. Once you want to escape from the central tower, it is very easy. It will be discovered by the villain, Melissa said. I also agree with Melissa's words, Li Tian said suddenly. Student Li Tian. The faces of the people next to him changed slightly. As the strongest among them, Li Tian's words carry a lot of weight. Everyone, don't forget that the other party has already controlled the security system, that is to say, those original guard robots are now and all turned into time bombs one by one. The police station and the professional hero outside have probably also been targeted. Be on the lookout, and now the entire island is hostage by the other party, and the dozens or hundreds of professional hero in the banquet hall can't do anything. Who do you think we can invite to help when we go out? Li Tian explained it all, but it caused everyone present to fall into silence. It's okay if no one reminded them before, but now that Li Tian has said it, they naturally understand their current situation. However, even so many professional hero can't do anything, not to mention, we are still far from professional hero. What can we do? Kaminari looked dejected. He just went out taking a peek. In the hall, the dozens of professional hero in the past are all well-known existences. And they are nothing more than nameless heroic students. My goal is to become a hero. If I just do nothing like this, I can't do it, Hong said bluntly. Watching the discussion of a group of students, Li Tian on the side watched it with gusto. To be honest, if the incident here is not Li Tian, but Savita, then it would be too simple. Rushing up, within 10 seconds, Li Tian will be able to kill those villains above. It is not impossible to kill most or even all of them. I'm going to save people. Lu Jiyu lowered his head and said in a deep voice, I can't do it at a time like this. I can't do it. I've already thought about it. We can think of a way. Neither need to fight with the villain, and a way to save everyone. But Iida frowned, wanting to say something else. Okay. Don't worry about such small things. This is not Neon, but my island. There is no law prohibiting the use of quirks here. As for fighting, even ordinary people, when facing villain, can also defend properly, isn't it? As children, we were accidentally scared and used quirks to counterattack. What's the big deal? Li Tian spread his hands and said. Hearing Li Tian's words, everyone reacted, but at the same time they looked at Li Tian in astonishment, completely unable to imagine that Li Tian would say such a thing. Student Li Tian, you are changing the concept secretly. Iida frowned suddenly, and said in a deep voice. I'm correcting your solidified thinking. Don't always focus on professional hero. What we want to be is hero, not professional hero. Li Tian's face, his smile gradually disappeared, and his face was full of calm. This is his true inner thoughts. Although after professionalization and regularization, hero is very popular and prosperous in this world. But hero is not just a profession. Rather, it is the hero who has achieved great deeds and is admirable. Just like now, just because the so-called law does not allow the use of quirks to hurt people, they don't think of ways to save people. This kind of behavior, no matter how much it conforms to the law, it is definitely not what hero did. Of course, Li Tian understands that his classmates don't really mean that, it's just that they don't think they have the ability to solve this incident, so they put their hopes on the more powerful professional hero. This is human nature, not something shameful or unforgivable. Even if it is Li Tian, if he does not have a strong speed force to back him up, but is just an ordinary person with no strength to restrain a chicken, he will definitely not stand up to be a hero, but wait for rescue. Everyone stop arguing. Speak up if you have something to say. Aren't we discussing how to deal with this incident? The tit-for-tat scene made Yi Yin and Uraraka on the side to persuade them. Li Tian's sleeve was also tugged by Yi Yin, motioning him not to make any noise. Everyone, I have a way. I can save everyone without fighting. Suddenly, Melissa stood up and said. Melissa. As soon as these words came out, everyone immediately looked at Melissa. The reason why the current situation is so severe, in the final analysis, is not that villain is so powerful, but that villain has manipulated the security defense system of my island, making the residents of the entire island become only hostages will make hero use the mouse, so we only need to take the security system back from the villain, and all problems can be solved. Correct. So that's the case, there is still this trick that can be used, Melissa, you are so smart. After listening to Melissa's explanation, everyone's faces suddenly showed excitement. But how do we take back the security system from the villain? None of us has that kind of superb computer technology. Iida frowned. Naturally, there is no need for them to talk about the computer. As for Melissa, it's not that he underestimates Melissa, but that the other party is the kind that can break through the security defense of an advanced island like my island. How could the villain of the system, an 18-year-old girl, come back? The central control room of my island's security defense system is on the top floor of this building. Since the security defense system has been manipulated by the other party, the identity verification and password lock should be destroyed. In that case, I can manually restart the security defense system. Come and ask the other party's manipulation, Melissa said with a serious face. Xiao Tu, you have to protect everyone well, you know, Li Tian said. Leave it to me. Yi Yin nodded heavily, his face full of determination. Be careful. Li Tian looked at the crowd and said in a deep voice. Then put Melissa on her back, activated the speed force, and instantly turned into a phantom and galloped away. According to what Melissa said about the key to the security defense system, everyone also made a decision and made a plan. The soldiers are divided into two groups. Along the way, Li Tian, who is the strongest, and Melissa, who is the only one who can restart the security defense system, are the surprise soldiers responsible for going to the top floor and restarting the security system. And the other way, except for the two, all the people of Xiangying, they are pretending to go to the top floor, but in fact they are the bait to attract the villain's sight and confuse the villain. With Yi Yin's invisibility, Jiro's keen sense of hearing, Green Valley and Hong's strong protection, Yaoyorozu Wan's all-round support, Uraraka's weightlessness, etc. People with complicated quirks are obviously not afraid of one or two villain hunting down. It can buy a lot of time for Li Tian and the others. Li Tian himself thinks it's meaningless. How long will the above battle last? Central Tower, 6th floor. Li Tian carried Melissa on his back and moved forward at a speed that ordinary camera probes could not capture at all. Window. Li Tian looked at an open window. His face couldn't help being happy. He knew that the road above would be closed on the 80th floor. His words, of course, is the choice, the fastest and most convenient shortcut. And it turns out that, obviously, no matter how advanced the central tower of my island is, it is impossible for all the windows to be operable and closed. After all, it is not a prison tower that really holds prisoners. Leaping out of the window, Li Tian quickly ran on the central tower with Melissa on his back. If someone outside looks at the central tower now, they will be able to see the surface of the central tower in the darkness, with a red phantom entwined with golden lightning flashing away. After taking a shortcut and walking in a straight line, the height from the 6th floor to the rooftop was only 600 or 700 meters. In less than a second, Li Tian rushed up to the rooftop with Melissa on his back. On the topmost roof of the central tower, Li Tian stopped in front of the roof and the entrance of the project with Melissa on his back. It's here, Li Tian said. Melissa looked at the passage in front of her with a dazed expression. Who I am? Where am I? What am I going to do? After asking 3 questions about her quality, Melissa finally realized that this is already. Where? Didn't it only take a second? Why did she suddenly appear on the rooftop from the 3rd floor? Although I have known about Li Tian and your quirks for a long time, but... Melissa looked at Li Tian with complex eyes, and only after experiencing it for herself can she understand that the numbers spit out by her lips become real after the speed. How amazing it is. She finally understood, because the Shenmue instrument would check out the amount of that terrifying quirks factor from Li Tian. Ignoring Melissa's shock, almost every person who was taken for a ride by him for the first time would do it for a short while, and he has long been used to it. Get ready. We will appear directly in that control room later, Li Tian said directly. After regaining her senses, Melissa did not forget their purpose this time. She also nodded quickly to indicate that she understood. Whoosh. In the passage, Li Tian, who was carrying Melissa on his back, continued to move forward at a terrifying speed. However, the scene in front of him made Li Tian stop involuntarily, and quickly found a corner to hide. Looking at the black mist with a group of villain chiefs in full armor. League of Villains. Li Tian was astonished. He never expected that he would see Kurogiri after a long absence on my island. In the passage, Li Tian brought Melissa and appeared in a corner. With a thought, he exited the super speed mode, turned around and looked at Melissa behind him, and said softly, Melissa, Dr. David seems to have been the villain was kidnapped, and the opponent's purpose should be the things in the storage room on the top floor of the central tower. Although Li Tian could also ignore this scene and take Melissa directly to the central control room, but Li Tian thought it was best to let Melissa know. Dad. Melissa's face suddenly became anxious, but Melissa always remembered the most important thing for her now, and the villain was not far away, so. She didn't act like the stupid TV show. The protagonist rushed out in a hurry. Dad, is he okay? Melissa asked anxiously. The doctor is fine. Li Tian nodded and said, if the purpose of the villain is really to keep the things in the safekeeping room, then the doctor will definitely be among the 10 safest. Hearing Li Tian's words, Melissa was silent for a while, with a struggle on her face, but she quickly became firm. Let's go to the central control room first, and restarting my island's security defense system is the most important thing now. Li Tian nodded. The most critical issue now is indeed to regain the security defense system. After all, the hundreds of thousands of hostages are all being hijacked by the security defense system. Looking at Melissa, who was still worried, Li Tian comforted, I assure you, nothing will happen to Dr. David. Well, I believe in Li Tian. Melissa showed a big smile, and then said firmly, I will definitely do my best to save everyone. Looking at Melissa, who was still worried, but had already made a decision, Li Tian didn't say much. A man's promise never needs too many other words to consolidate, but depends on the final result. Laugh. With a flash of speed and power, the figures of the two disappeared instantly. It's really boring. In the control room of the central tower, the middle-aged man was idly browsing the scenes on the screen. But behind him, the two villains responsible for protecting him and monitoring him stared at him without blinking. I thought it would be an exciting game to join the Silver Fox and invade my island. It seems that we still need to change our plan. Feeling the two gazes behind him, the sloppy middle-aged man muttered in his heart, but his eyes flashed. There was a hint of a smile. Is it better to directly kill a large number of people and anger the countries of the world to target Silver Fox and League of Villains, or disrupt the alliance between League of Villains and Silver Fox and let these two villains organize to fight? Really? All the choices are so charming, it's really hard to choose. The slovenly middle-aged man looked at the screen on the screen, and a perverted ecstatic smile gradually appeared on his face. Sure enough, it would be better to provoke a big melee between the League of Villains, Silver Fox, and the national forces behind my island. Recently, the League of Villains and Silver Fox seem to be preparing some big plan. At this time, they will anger the national forces and let them. It will be fun if you keep an eye on it. How many people should be killed before the national forces can make a move without thundering and directly destroying these two villain organizations? This speed is really difficult to grasp. The sloppy middle-aged man looked at the screen on the screen. There was an extremely evil smile on the corner of his mouth, and he pointed to the button on the keyboard unconsciously. With just a flick of a finger, all the security robots on the streets will turn into killing weapons one by one, presenting a bloody performance. However, beep beep. The urgent siren sounded suddenly. What's going on? Villain Ian frowned, stepped forward 2 steps and stood beside the sloppy middle-aged man and asked in a low voice. It's nothing. It's just a few bugs that slipped through the net. The sloppy middle-aged man stopped the movement of his hands for a moment, and then quickly called out the alarming images. It was at the stairs on the 3rd floor, and a group of teenagers and girls were breaking through the door and trying to escape. Who are these people? Shouldn't all the professional hero in tower be locked? Another villain, Marvin said in a deep voice. These people are. The sloppy middle-aged man said while quickly matching the information on the monitor in the database. It turns out that these people are first-year students of Hero High School. Although they are all excellent Hero Reserve players, they are all only 14 or 15-year-old children, so they are all children in the admission review. At that time, they did not live among the key review targets. The sloppy middle-aged man explained. Most of the targets that can be checked by his prey are those professional hero. Although there are no powerful hero who can turn the tide, the so-called strict plan is to prevent all accidents. Fish that slipped through the net. He also instantly understood the meaning of the sloppy middle-aged man, frowned, and then notified the villain below from the earphones, asking them to divide up into several people to arrest those children. It was just a group of students, and they didn't pay much attention to it, they just gave a slap and stopped paying attention. A large group of professional hero failed to recruit them. What can a group of students do? Strange. The slovenly middle-aged man frowned, looking at the group of children who had broken through the door and entered the 1st floor in the picture with a look of thought in their eyes. What are these hero reservists going to do on the 3rd floor? There shouldn't be anything of value there. Could it be that this is the first time this kind of villain incident happened, so they panicked? But the sloppy middle-aged man propped his chin and looked at the screen on the monitor, thinking in his eyes, it shouldn't be. Even if it's a first-year student, the quality of Shangying's students should not be so low. It's not so much that they're panicking, it's better to say that they're now attracting attention. There are others. Such a thought instantly appeared in the mind of the sloppy middle-aged man, but before he could open his mouth or start an investigation. Bang, bang. 3 consecutive muffled sounds came from the central control room. Villain Marvin, Villain Ian, Villain, sloppy middle-aged men, all fell to the ground after being hit hard. In front of the main console, a young girl and Li Tian appeared abruptly. Melissa, I'll leave it to you to restart the security defense system. I'll save Dr. David, Li Tian said, before turning his head and leaving. However, haha, a good way. The sloppy middle-aged man who was hit hard and fell to the ground suddenly laughed. Restarting the security defense system, keeping the hostages out of danger, and liberating many professional heroes is indeed a good way to break the situation. Even the appearance of that group of seemingly redundant children unexpectedly stopped my means, and it's interesting to see you again under such circumstances. I didn't expect to meet such an interesting thing. The sloppy middle-aged man who fell on the ground said, laughing more and more presumptuously. And Li Tian looked at the fallen figure with an ugly expression. This laughter definitely spread to the storage room not far away, that is to say, he was exposed. How could it be possible? The blow he just hit not only hit a position that would definitely cause people to become unconscious, but also added a weak speed force lightning disturbance that would disrupt nerve signals and cause temporary paralysis. Just wake up. Li Tian's face was ugly, and he looked at the fallen figure vigilantly. A tyranny flashed in his eyes, but he was calmed down afterwards. If it's Savitar. Now we only need to rush up and chase, where there is a need such a hassle. Melissa on the side was also startled by the voice of the villain, but she reacted quickly and started to restart the security defense system without any pause. As for the villain, behind him is the Flash. This guy. Li Tian looked at the slovenly middle-aged man who collapsed on the ground. A strange look flashed across his face. If his attack just now didn't work, then why didn't the other party get up yet? But if it worked, then what's the matter with the other party's voice? Hey. The sloppy figure on the ground didn't move, but the laughter didn't stop. Come on. Kill me. Just like you usually do. What's the meaning? Li Tian frowned, looking at the slovenly middle-aged man who collapsed on the ground like a madman. These words don't seem to be gibberish. Forget it, it's more important to go to the storage room. With a thought, Li Tian immediately entered the super speed mode, ready to make up a blow, and then went to the storage room. B. At the moment of entering the speed force mode, Li Tian saw the phantom figure that was superimposed on the sloppy middle-aged man who fell to the ground, almost invisible to the naked eye. He is. Memories flashed through Li Tian's mind in an instant. His eyes widened, he looked at the sloppy middle-aged man, and remembered. Spirited Soul. This, surprisingly, is the villain he met when he was incarnated as Savitar, possessing a soul, a mysterious villain who regards criminal activities as a game and whose true identity is unknown. The moment he recognized this person, Li Tian's brain, which had entered the speed mode at the same time, started to run quickly, as if a bomb had detonated in his mind in an instant. What the other party said just now reproduced in his mind verbatim. And it's interesting, very interesting, to see you again under these circumstances. This is, you recognized me. Li Tian's scalp went numb, he couldn't believe it, but he couldn't believe it. How to do? Li Tian frowned, his heart beat faster, and he couldn't help but panic. But he wasn't really a boy after all, and with the super-developed thinking of the Speed Force mode, Li Tian thought of a lot in an instant. That is, the other party is just a villain, no one would be willing to believe what a villain said. And, without proof, believe a villain's words. If the other party speaks out, it may cause him a little trouble, but if he refuses to admit it, no one can do anything to him, not to mention. He has never disclosed the ability to create clones, only a small design, you can easily get rid of his suspicion. After thinking through all this, Li Tian calmed down instantly, looking at the phantom of the sloppy middle-aged man in a coma, a fierce look flashed in his eyes. It is said that the power of thunder and lightning can harm demons and ghosts. A fierce look flashed in Li Tian's eyes, and he came directly to the side of the slovenly middle-aged man. His right hand moved back and forth quickly, gathering a group of lightning with super speed and force. Li Tian glanced at the sloppy middle-aged man who fell to the ground. This man should be just like the man last time, just an ordinary person controlled by a soul, and then, without hesitation, Li Tian took the group. The Speed Force lightning was thrown on the sloppy middle-aged man. Crackle. Crackle. Even Li Tian in Speed Force mode couldn't see the crazily beating golden arc. What? With a silent scream, the phantom attached to the sloppy middle-aged man suddenly stood up. Most of his upper body was detached from the body, screaming in pain. The face that couldn't see clearly was extremely ferocious. It's effective. Li Tian's first reaction when he saw the out-of-body phantom was that the lightning was effective. But then, there was a look of astonishment on his face. You know, he is now in the Speed Force mode, and as a result, the speed of that phantom, in his opinion, can still be called very agile. What a quick movement. Li Tian was amazed in his heart. Is it because there is no physical bondage, only the relationship between the soul? Li Tian couldn't help guessing. Among the countless mysterious novels he had read in his previous life, he had seen such a saying that still impressed him. That is the soul, or the speed of spirit and thinking is actually much faster than the human body, but the soul needs the protection of the human body to survive, and if it exists in the human body, it will inevitably be dragged down by the quality of the human body. No wonder he was escaped by this guy last time. He only used the extreme speed mode. How could he catch this guy whose speed is comparable to the super speed mode? Li Tian thought to himself. At the same time, Li Tian looked at the phantom that was just screaming and had no other changes, and he knew in his heart that this time, he might not be able to keep this guy, who wouldn't let him fly through the wall. But, crackle, crackle, a golden arc condensed from Li Tian's palm again, and, awakened by the ear-piercing sound of thunder and light arcs, the phantom attached to the sloppy middle-aged man's body instantly broke away and floated in midair. Although the other party's appearance is blurred, as if it is mosaic, it can't be seen. But that pair of incomparably vicious eyes and the silently opening and closing mouth made Li Tian frown secretly. With a wave, the lightning of the super speed force shot out instantly, and directly bombarded the opponent's body. What? The phantom's face distorted instantly, as if the devil from hell faced the sun and screamed silently again. But this time, the other party obviously learned how to behave. Even though the pain was like this, he still flew at a high speed, directly rushed into the ceiling, and then flew out from the top floor of the central tower, flew into the distant night sky and disappeared. If you don't hurry up and run away, you're still here cursing and resenting. Li Tian snorted coldly. The first time he was afraid of directly killing the sloppy middle-aged man, so he didn't gather much speed and power, but the second time he didn't have the slightest intention to hold back, and he condensed the most speed and power. Lightning at the fastest speed burst out. Even if you can't kill the opponent, you can definitely peel off a layer of skin. Whoosh. With a flash of super speed, Li Tian instantly disappeared in this room. Storage room. In front of Area 1147, Kurogiri looked at the open safe deposit box, reached out and took out the box. Is this the one? Cory asked in a low voice, looking at the safe deposit box in Kurogiri's hand. That's right. That's it. The hard work of our years of hard work. Sam on the side quickly said respectfully. Very good. Cory had a smile on his face and walked towards Kurogiri. And Kurogiri also opened the box and walked over to Cory. Undoubtedly, what was in the box was the Quirk's augmentation device, and its research materials that Dr. David had worked on for several years. Is this what the League of Villains wants? Carl frowned, looking at the installation in the alley and thinking. He didn't know what the device was for, but there is no doubt that it is definitely a precious instrument that can make League of Villains so interested. Find a way. Get a spare copy. Carl thought to himself, even taking away the original instrument would definitely not work. An instrument that doesn't know what it is, can't break the temporary cooperation between them. Not to mention. Carl looked at the tens of thousands of safe deposit boxes in the storage room, and in his eyes something called wildness was rapidly expanding. On the other side, Dr. David's heart was bleeding, and his eyes were bloodshot, staring at the villain and his former good assistant Sam. As the inventor of the Quirk's amplifier, no one knows the power of this device better than Dr. David. This is a device that all countries fear that he may cause social instability and seal it up to prohibit research. If the villain gets it, the world will definitely be messed up. But the other party holds tens of thousands of hostages, including hundreds of thousands of tourists, including tens of thousands of scientists and their families on my island. If there is a slight accident, the other party will kill them. Anyone who dies will be a loss to the world, especially at that critical time. What should I do? What should I do? Dr. David was thinking quickly about ways to break the situation. However, no way. I can't save everyone. Dr. David's eyes were full of pain and despair. All Might, if you were here. How wonderful it would be. Dr. David shouted frantically in his heart. Carl suppressed the impulse called ambition on his face, then turned his head and sternly said to Dr. David, "Okay, Dr. David, let's continue. Next, I will talk about the area, and you will be in that area. Open the box. You, Dr. David, who is supervising us, don't play any tricks." The second half of the sentence was obviously addressed to Sam on the side. However, without waiting for him to speak, a burst of laughter came from the central control room not far away. That sound. Carl frowned. Which guy's laughter is it? What's going on? Such an idea just appeared in his mind, before he could think about other things. Thorn. A red figure instantly appeared in the storage room. Speed Force World. Li Tian's figure galloped over. Looking at the scene in this room, a smile appeared on Li Tian's face instantly. The farce should be over. Li Tian looked at the many villain in the room. His pupils were leaping with lightning speed, and he didn't have any intention of stopping at all, but simply galloped towards the villain. Shock Fist. Having learned the lesson just now, Li Tian's figure instantly appeared in front of every villain, and then the high-speed vibrating fist mercilessly bombarded every villain's chin. Although the high-speed vibration on Li Tian's fist does not have the exaggerated destructive power of Whitebeard, the world's strongest man in the One Piece world, but hitting the fragile jaws of these villains, shaking their heads and making them faint, there is nothing wrong with that, though, and there may be some hangovers. Bang. 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 It's just a moment of effort. 1, 2, 3 appeared in midair. A total of 5 fully armed villain figures, rolling their eyes, were frozen in midair. The new faces are resolved, and the next step is to meet old acquaintances. Li Tian turned his head to look at Kurogiri, who was looking over there, and the villain he didn't know. Whoosh. Even so, Li Tian's speed did not stop at all. In an instant, he appeared in front of the villain holding the Quirks amplifier in his hand. The villain can't touch this thing. Li Tian looked at the villain in front of him, a slight smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and then he punched the villain mercilessly towards the opponent's chin. Shock Fist. Boom. There was a loud noise, and a figure flew out, hitting the console in the storage room. Time begins to flow. Bang. 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 With several sounds in succession, the 5 fully armed villain from the villain organization Silver Fox all flew out, groaned in midair and lost consciousness directly, and hit the ground heavily. What's the matter? Dr. David was startled suddenly, and what happened in front of him left him at a loss. Subconsciously looked at the loud noise, the control room console behind him. Student Li Tian. Dr. David exclaimed. Isn't this the student Shangying who came to my island with All Might and another person this morning? And on the console of the storage room behind Dr. David, Li Tian stood up with an embarrassed expression on his face. Although there were bursts of severe pain in his body, it was not unbearable for Li Tian, who would fracture every time he punched with all his strength. But this funny scene made him extremely embarrassed. Though no one knows that this thing seems to be broken, so I don't need to pay for it, Li Tian said with a light cough as he got off the console. No. Isn't that right? Li Tian, why are you here? David just wanted to say no, but then he reacted and said with a look of astonishment. Well, when the road is injustice, draw your sword to help. Li Tian said a little embarrassedly. Okay, Dr. David, I will talk about other things later. The most important thing now is to get that thing back. What happened? Obviously, David is not the only one who is confused. Villain Corey, who was targeted by Li Tian just now, also has a confused face, touching his chin. He seemed to have been punched just now. Which bastard is it? Kurogiri on the side saw Li Tian's flaming eyes on his purple-black smoky face suddenly jumped, and Kurogiri's voice trembled a little. The culprit who made him extremely embarrassing in the organization appeared in retrospect. The flames of anger almost burned his reason, so he couldn't help rushing forward to fight Li Tian to the death. As soon as he thought of me dying, Kurogiri reacted instantly. Although the anger in his heart was almost burning, he did not lose his mind. Lord Corey. That kid is one of the most hated villain in our League of Villains. Quirks is a terrifying haste that can be manipulated freely. Be careful. Kurogiri reminded in a deep voice. Is this the kid? Corey reacted in an instant. Although Li Tian didn't know it clearly, in the reorganized League of Villains, there had been faint gossip about Li Tian, which directly led to the battle between Shen and Yi, the culprit who caused their former boss to be arrested and imprisoned. So, I didn't feel wrong just now, I was indeed punched. Corey thought to himself, looking at Li Tian, who was not far away. A gleam suddenly flashed in his eyes. His quirks seemed to restrain Li Tian. If you can kill this kid. Such thoughts flashed across Corey's eyes very suddenly. Kurogiri, you send away the information on that thing first, and I'll stop him, Corey said in a deep voice. That. Kurogiri's voice suddenly became awkward. It was taken away. Things were taken away. Kurogiri said weakly, his voice full of embarrassment. What? Corey exclaimed instantly, and looked up at Li Tian over there, and sure enough, Li Tian was handing a box to Dr. David. A bastard who has done more than succeed in his affairs, Corey cursed suddenly. Of course, he also understands that this is not Kurogiri's fault, not to mention taking a box from Kurogiri's hand. Even if he was punched, if it wasn't for Quirk's feedback, he would feel baffled. Fortunately, I kept Quirks cautiously. Corey couldn't help but rejoiced in his heart, but in an instant it turned into a burning room. That information, but must be brought back. What can I do? What can I do to get back the data from that guy? Corey thought of the speed at which he couldn't see and couldn't react at all. His face was instantly filled with haze, and then he looked at the Quirk's amplifier in his hand. Hope. This thing can be a bit more powerful. Li Tian handed the box in his hand to Dr. David with an embarrassed expression. Just now, when he punched that villain in the jaw, he didn't expect that the villain's quirks would be able to rebound the attack. So when punching, he still maintains the Speed Force mode, but uses the concussion punch that makes the fist hit countless Rakido in an instant to attack. He didn't notice it for a while, but was instantly bounced back by the opponent's quirks, and all the Rakidos of the shock punch he used bounced back without falling. Fortunately, at the moment when he was bounced back, Li Tian's super fast reaction in the Speed Force mode allowed Li Tian's other hand to snatch the box in Kurogiri's hand. Li Tian knows that compared to any finished product, the information of the Quirk's amplifier, contained in this box is the real precious thing. The quirks of villain have strong defense and counterattack capabilities. Li Tian looked at the villain who was about to put the Quirk's amplifier on his head. Li Tian took a step forward and instantly entered the super speed for force mode. Time seems to have stood still. Whoosh! Li Tian appeared in an instant and rushed in front of the villain, raised his hand and grabbed it directly. Although the quirks of the villain are not known yet, the Quirk's amplifier is not allowed to be worn by the villain no matter what. Otherwise, even simple things will become complicated. However, when Li Tian's hand was 20 centimeters away from villain, he couldn't reach it. This is. Li Tian looked at the ripples in the air that prevented his palm from moving forward, and a look of astonishment flashed in his eyes. Barrier. Li Tian looked at the looming semicircular barrier, and the quirks of villain was vaguely visible in his heart. Corey, villain, quirks, rebound barrier, can freely create a 360-degree barrier around the body that can rebound attacks, hard to hurt by swords, unstoppable by guns. It is an indestructible super defense. Weak point. The defense on one side of the barrier is invincible, the other side is broken in one battle. Just now, has this barrier been put on him all the time? Li Tian obviously figured out the reason why he was ejected before. I don't know how hard this barrier of yours can be. Li Tian looked at the barrier in front of him. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He clenched his fist with his right hand, and swung it out mercilessly. Supersonic punch backquote. Boom. Driven by the terrifying extreme speed, Li Tian's fist is so powerful that it is beyond imagination. Just the blowing wind of the fist can hardly open the eyes of people. That barrier immediately trembled, and ripples kept appearing in the air. However, it's not broken. Li Tian's complexion changed slightly, and he couldn't help being surprised when he looked at the barrier in front of him. His rapid punch, although I can't say it can compare to All Might's full-strength fist, but there is no doubt that it definitely surpasses the 100% punch that Green Valley once swung for all with a broken bone. Even his current right hand was severely injured by the barrier's rebound force. I'll see how many punches you can block. Li Tian shouted sharply, recovered at super fast speed, and swung out his uninjured right hand again. Supersonic punch. Supersonic punch. Supersonic punch. Punch after punch. Li Tian waved his fist without stopping. Almost instantly, Li Tian swung his fists a dozen or so times in succession. All I could hear was the faint sound of click, click, click. The barrier in the air shattered. The strong punching wind broke through the barrier in an instant, and hit Corey and Kurogiri straight. Boom. Faced with the unseen rapid punching, after the barrier shattered, Corey didn't even have time to react, and was directly knocked out. This is the most difficult thing. Get rid of you first. Li Tian held Kurogiri in his hand, and a flash of light flashed in his eyes. Last time in USJ, although he deliberately let them go, the other party had no doubts he pretended to be dizzy and passed the test. This made Li Tian firmly remember Kurogiri, holding the opponent's neck with his right hand, and mercilessly smashing it towards the ground with all his strength. After 5 or 6 times in a row, he disrupted the opponent's body nerves with lightning speed. After making sure that Kurogiri passed out, Li Tian threw the other side aside. Next, there's another tricky guy. Li Tian raised his eyes and looked at Corey, who was sent flying by him just now. He didn't expect that the other party was so cautious. Apart from the barrier that blocked him, the other party still kept the barrier on his body, and even the quirk's enhancement device was protected inside the barrier. And this punch is not the concussion punch that Li Tian used to hurt people with the shock last time, but a supersonic punch that is powerful, heavy and fast as lightning. Even if the opponent's barrier wrapped around his body can bear it, but the opponent was indeed thrown away by Li Tian's punch without a doubt. Such turtle-like quirks are really unfriendly to single-player players like me. Li Tian shook his hand and complained helplessly, urging the Speed Force to speed up the recovery of his right hand injury. Sensing the things that can be done after controlling the Speed Force, turning passive into active. So, you can't let him wear something. Li Tian thought to himself. He could already imagine how thick the tortoise shell would be on the other party's body after wearing that thing. Pity. Real world. Corey took the quirk's amplifier, and wanted to put it on his head. In his opinion, his quirks restrained Li Tian faintly, just because his speed was too slow to keep up with the rhythm. And now, the only thing he can enhance is this quirk's amplifying device. I hope that your little thing is worthy of our League of Villains contribution. Corey felt cold, and wanted to wear it on his head injury. Of course, he didn't forget to set up a defensive barrier in front of him, and included the quirk's amplifier in his hand into the protection of the barrier. Then, in the blink of an eye, the barrier was broken. He flew upside down and lay down in the corner of the wall, while Kurogiri fell at Li Tian's feet, not knowing whether he was alive or dead. This is. Corey realized instantly, it was Li Tian who did it. Then, he flew to another location. Then came a new location. And then again. That bastard. Corey felt like he was being kicked around like an oversized ball, even though he was protected by a close-fitting rebound barrier. It was undoubtedly insulting him. Must wear this device. Corey gritted his teeth, feeling ruthless in his heart, completely ignoring the attacks around him, but kept thickening the barrier while continuing to raise his hand to push the quirk's amplifier to his head. He controlled the shape of the barrier well, and put his arms on his head for protection. Although Li Tian's attack could knock him into the air, there was no way to deform his barrier to affect Corey's movements. Time is extremely slow at this moment. It was just a simple action of bringing the quirk's amplifier in his hand to his head, but because of Li Tian's non-stop attacks and the need to carefully maintain the shape of the control barrier, it took 3 to 5 seconds forcibly just finished. And during these 3 to 5 seconds, Li Tian didn't know how many times he had attacked him. But it turns out, I won. Corey's eyes burst into amazing brilliance. Power is constantly coming up. Corey looked like he was crazy, feeling the continuous power in his body, feeling the power of quirks that had never been so clear. It was the power of the barrier. I'm invincible. Haha. Corey laughed wildly. Go to hell. The little thief who can only run away, Corey thought, and the range and strength of the barrier, which had never been reached before, instantly enveloped the entire room, like a huge bubble, enveloping everyone. Get up, and then start to shrink, shrinking rapidly. The golden lightning of Li Tian's incarnation is also naturally within this huge barrier. Looking at the scene in front of him, anyone can understand Corey's intentions. This is to trap Li Tian firmly, then shrink the barrier, and finally restrain Li Tian. It's finally finished. Looking at the scene in front of him, Li Tian didn't have the slightest worry, but heaved a sigh of relief, stopped the Speed Force mode, and suddenly showed a big smile at Corey. This round, I won. Haha. Are you dreaming? Looking at Li Tian, who finally appeared, Corey seemed to express a resentment directly in his heart. He had decided that Li Tian could not escape. As for Li Tian's words, he completely took as a joke, a big joke. Facing Corey's ridicule, Li Tian didn't care. Instead, he still looked at Corey with a light smile, watching. Corey's smile stiffened and disappeared, watching Corey's barrier dissipate out of thin air. Seeing Corey collapsed with disbelief, he lost consciousness. This thing. Is it fake? At the moment when he fell down and lost consciousness, Corey even doubted the arrival of the quark's amplifier he was wearing on his head. But in fact, it's really troublesome. Li Tian looked at Corey, who fell, with deep disgust in his eyes. Although the opponent's quirks were tricky, they were not difficult to break, just like the first layer of barrier, which could be broken with just a dozen or 20 punches, where he needed 3 to 5 seconds of continuous attacks. For Li Tian, the difficulty is not to break the barrier, but how to smoothly close the hand at the moment of breaking the opponent's barrier to ensure that the opponent will not die. Otherwise, with this villain's small body, one punch going on is definitely a proper and thorough discussion. If you change to the identity of Savitar, the combat power is fully activated, and the battle can be ended in a second. Li Tian looked at the fallen villain with a trace of tyranny flashing in his eyes, and in an instant fleeing, then shook his head with a light smile. Li Tian said helplessly, "Unfortunately, I am Li Tian now, the future Flash." If it's Li Tian, then he doesn't want to kill villain, live in the police station for a few days and nights, and wait for the outside world to gossip about his affairs for a while and not necessarily come to a conclusion. The knot. It's over. Dr. David, who had been blown into the corner by the blowing fist wind, held the box tightly and poked his head out, looking at the unconscious villain and Li Tian standing there. His face suddenly showed ecstasy color. Saved. Not only the many technological inventions here have been preserved, but even the quirk's amplifier, and the information that he was already desperate to take away are all preserved. He will not become a sinner of my island, nor a sinner of the world. Student Li Tian, thank you for saving my island. Dr. David stepped forward excitedly. It's thanks to Dr. David's instruction just now, otherwise, I'm afraid it will take a lot of effort to defeat this guy. Li Tian shook his head and said truthfully. As long as he doesn't want to get himself involved in a life lawsuit, he will be restrained when facing villain, and this time villain Corey's strength and quirks just happened to be stuck at one point. With all his strength, Li Tian can't control his own Rakido. He can't guarantee that he can break the barrier close to the villain and at the same time keep the villain alive, but if he doesn't go all out. If it can't break through the opponent's defense, the opponent can wear the quirk's booster device, which is bound to be more difficult. As for why it is thanks to Dr. David's guidance, that's a long story. That is, what happened 10 seconds ago. Facing the fragile villain under the tortoise shell, aiming at someone to hit is definitely not an option. Even just rubbing this side, Li Tian's fists under full force can tear off a large piece of the opponent's flesh and blood. Proper fatal injury, so Li Tian simply gave up attacking the villain, but put the target on the quirk's booster device. Take this thing apart. Even if he is full of grinds, Li Tian will grind the opponent to death. After all, Li Tian didn't believe that someone could maintain that level of defense all the time. Therefore, Li Tian took a short errand, took time out, and pulled Dr. David's vision and language abilities into the world of the Speed Force. While saving the Speed Force, Dr. David could barely follow him on Li Tian's chat speed. Then the two chatted for a while, preparing to discuss the issue of compensation after destroying the quirk's amplifier. After some harmonious and friendly talks, Dr. David was very generous and asked Li Tian to let go of the destruction, and he would pay for all consumption. After getting the permission, Li Tian smiled happily, and chatted with David for a while typing villain, from astronomy to history, from humanities to food, from animals to biology, so happy. In the end, the two of them talked about this incident and the quirk's amplifier, for some unknown reason, and Li Tian finally realized that Dr. David was not involved in this incident, but simply his assistant Sam's actions. As for why there was such a big mess without the help of Dr. David, that is purely the reason why the rare quirk's teleportation of Kurogiri exists in the League of Villains that Sam found this time. Li Tian couldn't help but sigh. He didn't expect that this incident would be returned to the plot in such a weird way. As for the quirk's amplifier, Li Tian also learned from Dr. David that this device is still only an unfinished product. The function is still very simple, only by stimulating the peripheral nerves of the brain to activate the subconscious mind through weak currents, so as to achieve 100% control over the quirks in the body, and to realize the function of enhancing the purpose of quirks in a disguised form. Even the Bluetooth music function has not been installed yet. Go in, not to mention other small functions such as fire, moisture, impact, and lightning strikes. And when he heard that there was no lightning protection function, Li Tian reacted. Is this thing anti-electricity? The golden arc in Li Tian's hand was beating, and his eyes were blinking. Then, there's no after that. Isn't the villain who was paralyzed by electricity still lying there? Li Tian and Dr. David held back for a while, and then talked about the situation on my island with Dr. David. When Dr. David learned that his daughter Melissa was restarting the security defense system in the nearby central control room, he was obviously relieved. Obviously, Dr. David also understands that the reason why this gang of villain can be so arrogant is because they have controlled the security defense system of my island, taking tens of thousands of residents and tourists as hostages. As long as the security defense system is disarmed, relying on the defensive power of my island, unless it is a villain at the level of All for One, it will not be able to cause much splash. However, compared to Dr. David, who was relieved and relaxed, the mood of the other person beside him was not so beautiful. Sam shrank in the corner, looking at the villain in a messy room, with a look of fear on his face, and regret finally appeared in his eyes. He was blinded by lard, and he made such a choice. Contact villain to sneak attack on my island to snatch the scientific research products on the island. What the hell is he doing? Not to mention the many consortiums behind my island and the many invisible national forces afterwards. Even if it is the villain, can he really get the money? If he gets that much money, the other party will not say villain, but a businessman. Can save him now. Doctor. It's my fault, I'm despicable. I contacted villain shamelessly. Please help me, help me. Sam in the corner rushed out immediately, snotting his nose, tears rushed over and cried. However, before he rushed over, Sam, who just took 2 steps, fainted on the ground. Dr. David was taken aback, then reacted instantly and looked away to the side. Li Tian shrugged his shoulders innocently. If he goes under the water, he should hit the street. Crackling. In the central control room, Melissa suppressed her worries about the quiet storage room. Her hands were flying on the keyboard, moving quickly on the keyboard. As each key pressed and bounced, the security defense in the central computer in front of him, the system also quickly changed from red to green. Finished. Melissa shouted violently. In less than 3 minutes from the beginning to the end, Melissa completed the restart of the security system super fast, and deleted all the hands and feet possessed by the soul before. Inside the central tower, the closed steel gates reopened one after another, and the security robots on patrol quietly shut down and stood still. On the streets of my island, there were robots that were ready to attack tourists and citizens. It also resumed the normal patrol state. My island security system, start the normal mode. Repeat, my island security. The sound of the announcement echoed over my island. The signal of the TV, mobile phone and computer, which was completely blocked before, has also returned to normal. The banquet hall on the upper floor. The straps that bind the professional hero are also directly broken. What's going on? The sudden scene made even the professional hero stunned, let alone the guarded villain. Because of the previous order from the central control room, 3 people were assigned to catch the fish that slipped through the net, so there are 6 villain left in the banquet hall. And the profession hero 10, Soil, Master. A so-so couple of 180. Facing the coveted professional hero, villain. Yeah, the 5th floor of the central tower. When some professional hero rushed over to catch the villain who came out ahead of time and rushed to the 5th floor, this was the scene that appeared in front of them. On the 5th floor of the entire central tower, a small area has almost completely turned into ruins. The pillars used for decoration in the hall are tilted here and there, and the ground is full of gravel, ice, burn marks, and explosion marks. In the middle of the 5th floor, everyone in Class A is also in a panic at this time. They were wearing tattered suits and dresses, but the 3 villain who chased out just now all fainted on the ground, and Midoriya, Kaminari, and Iida were entangled tightly with the strong rope made by Yaoyorozu Wan. A group of professional hero looked at everyone in Class A in surprise. Hey, we won. The generation of chickens and dogs. Although it didn't take long, everyone was in a state of embarrassment. No doubt they had experienced a difficult battle. Seeing the appearance of many professional hero, everyone relaxed their nerves and immediately cheered. At this time, a harsh siren sounded from outside the central tower. Apparently, even if someone called the police as soon as the signal was restored, the My Island police were still belated. Villain, there is no one left behind. Central tower, top floor. Melissa, who had restarted the security defense system, immediately rushed out of the control room and rushed towards the quiet storage room. Father. Li Tian, please don't worry. Melissa kept praying in her heart, with an anxious expression on her face. The first time Melissa saw the door of the storage room opened, she saw Dr. David's back, and hurriedly shouted, Dad. In the storage room. Seeing you, I couldn't help but think of the first time I saw All Might. Dr. David looked at Li Tian in front of him with emotion, and said with emotion. How could it be? My speed is only a day faster at most. Compared with All Might, my strength is still far behind. Li Tian shook his head modestly and said. Not bad, not bad. Dr. David looked at Li Tian and said with a smile in his eyes. If it is said that what All Might showed in the past was the ultimate violent aesthetics, then what Li Tian is showing now is the ultimate speed and passion. For people, extreme violence and extreme speed are always the wildest things that can arouse people's hearts. If you have to say bad, then Jay is. Melissa. While chatting happily with Li Tian, Dr. David was startled, and turned to look outside the door. Melissa stood at the door, looking at the intact Dr. David with surprise. Dad. Melissa rushed over directly. Melissa. Dr. David also smiled. Li Tian couldn't help shaking his head and laughing as he watched the father and daughter rushing towards each other. Then. Huh? Li Tian was startled suddenly, and instantly turned his head to look in Corey's direction. At this moment, Corey, who had fainted, his head was wrapped in a cloud of purple-black mist at some point. Not good. Li Tian's complexion changed instantly, and he directly entered the Speed Force mode to rush over there. However, he found out too late. Laugh. Blood spurted out directly. Corey, who was just paralyzed and fell to the ground just now, has turned into a headless corpse. Laugh. Blood spurted out directly. Corey, who was just paralyzed and fell to the ground just now, has turned into a headless corpse. Kurogiri. In the Speed Force mode, Li Tian's face was full of anger. With his speed, the moment when the blood gushed out just now was played frame by frame with incomparable clarity. Li Tian suddenly turned his head and glared at Kurogiri, who was lying on the side. Careless. Li Tian growled in his heart, and was thrown again. It never occurred to him that this time, the heavy blow didn't stun Kurogiri, and even the electric shock didn't work. That's what Shikuraki needs. Kurogiri collapsed on the ground, his golden eyes fixed on the headless body of Corey. A sense of relief flashed in his eyes, and the purple-black mist scattered quietly without a trace. Although he didn't pass out, nor was he completely paralyzed due to physical reasons, but he was still severely injured, and it was impossible to escape. Forcibly opening a small portal is already his limit now. Although it's not enough. But this is my apology. Shigaraki. Kurogiri, who was trying not to pass out, was blurred, his golden eyes flickered, and an illusory figure appeared in front of him, that is. Grown-ups. At the last moment of this coma, Kurogiri seemed to see all for one. This guy. In front of Kurogiri, Li Tian looked at Kurogiri, who was really completely unconscious, with an ugly expression, and then at the dead Corey, for the second time. This was his second time. The first time was played by Kurogiri pretending to be unconscious. And after all, he and Kurogiri only met twice, that is to say, he would be cheated every time. This guy. Is it against my fate? Li Tian gritted his teeth and stared at Kurogiri bitterly. Then squat down and pull up. Although it may be used, Li Tian wants to know. What happened to this guy when he passed out? It turns out that when this guy passed out, except for the layer of Kurogiri on his head, would his body return to his original human body? After exiting the speed mode, the blood gushing out from that side completely fell on the ground, completely dyeing that area red. Dr. David at the side reacted in an instant. Seeing the scene of blood spraying out not far away, he turned around and stood in front of Melissa in an instant. However, it's still a bit late. Ah, Melissa screamed with a pale face. For an 18-year-old girl, the scene in front of her was too powerful. I was too careless, Dr. David, your invention was taken away by the villain. Li Tian said with an ugly face. No. Nothing. Dr. David shook his head, his face turned pale. Obviously, this bloody scene was too exciting for him. If things are stolen, they are taken away. People can do as long as they have nothing to do. Moreover, the things have poor anti-electricity capabilities. They should be broken and difficult to repair. The most important information is still not taken away. Perhaps feeling that the words were too cowardly, Dr. David quickly added a sentence, and his face gradually recovered. After all, men are more resistant to bloody testicles. Yeah. Li Tian nodded and didn't speak, but he still couldn't let go. This has the direction of a bloody scene. Obviously, no one wants to stay longer. Dr. David and Melissa quickly walked out of the room and waited for the arrival of the police in the corridor. And Li Tian also didn't want to stay here, grabbed Kurogiri, and walked out of the room. He wouldn't believe Kurogiri anymore, so it's better to keep his eyes on. Without waiting for a while, the police came to the top floor of the central tower. When they saw the many villain lying on the ground in the room, as well as the headless dead body of the villain. All the policemen's expressions changed, and they looked away at the owner vigilantly. However, fortunately, there are witnesses and surveillance in the storage room as evidence. Otherwise, this time Li Tian might live in the police station of my island for a few days. But even so, when Li Tian finished the record and was allowed to leave the police station, it was already the afternoon of the next day. Free air. Li Tian stood at the door of the police station and took a deep breath. Well, no exhaust in PM, it is high-quality air. Li Tian began to analyze seriously. When Li Tian walked out of the police station, not far away, everyone from Class A, Melissa, and even the two girls Asui and Ashido who were not there last night were all here, and no one was left behind. Are you waiting for me? Li Tian's eyes lit up. He took 2 steps forward, and looked at the crowd with some emotion. No, classmate Li Tian, we just came out, Iida replied seriously. They came out one after another, but they didn't make it. Li Tian, you are the last one, Yaoyorozu Wan explained. Oh. Li Tian. That's right, although they didn't almost get involved in a life lawsuit like myself, they also participated in the whole incident last night, and they also used quirks to reach 3 villain. If they were placed in the Neon Land, they would definitely be criticized. The dog blood is imminent. In my island, the police officers of the police station treated them with delicious food and drinks, and took notes, as if they were hero. Yes. That's right. These policemen are all living on my island, and their wives, children, family and friends are all in the residential areas of the island. If the villain create chaos or start massacres, then their families, wives and children may not be alive anymore. At this time, it is not an exaggeration for them to dare to treat Li Tian and his group as criminals, as benefactors and gods. Seeing Li Tian's, oh, with a stinky face, everyone suddenly laughed. Everyone, it's getting late today, and something like that happened yesterday, so we won't go to the fair this afternoon. We'll have a good night's rest at the Metropolitan Hotel, and come out to play together tomorrow, okay? Iida said. Most he raised his hand first and said. I agree. Although I didn't get embarrassed in the police station, I feel tired. Jiro said with a tired face. Yeah. Me too, now I seem to go back and take a bath, and then sleep well on the big bed in the hotel. Yi Yin also nodded in agreement. I also agree. After all, everyone has experienced a fierce battle. It is never possible to rest in peace in the police station. Green Valley also nodded in agreement, and now he wants to quickly find All Might. Everyone talked one sentence after another, and almost everyone agreed with Ida's point of view. Although Li Tian is not very tired, but what can he do? Let's work hard. He also agreed to rest today. Everyone. Then let me guide you to visit the expo tomorrow. In the remaining few days, I will definitely make up for everything that I didn't see today, Melissa said with a smile. There was Melissa, an acquaintance, who wanted to show them around. Everyone was overjoyed, and naturally no one would object. Agree. Agree. The first to raise their hands were Kaminari and Putao, with wretched faces. Bang, bang, 2 sounds, and the 2 of them fainted to the ground. Iida-san, I'll leave the 2 of them to you. Jiro retracted his headphone jack and said with a smile on his face. Devil. XN talking, laughing and fighting. Everyone separated one by one and returned to the hotel where they were staying. Li Tian and Green Valley All Might came together, so the place where the 3 of them live is naturally together. Back at the hotel, All Might had been waiting for them in the room for a while. All Might, last night. Green Valley just wanted to speak. All Might raised his hand to organize Green Valley, and said with a smile on his face, I already know what happened last night. Understood. Green Valley was surprised. Li Tian next to him couldn't help but rolled his eyes. LVGU is smart, but sometimes he can't turn around and play. Who is All Might? The former #1 hero. Such a big event last night, it would be surprising if you couldn't understand everything from beginning to end after a day. Last night, you two, no, it was all of you who did a very good job, living up to the word hero. All Might showed a big smile to the 2, and the thumb of his right hand was not stingy stretched out. All Might. Green Valley looked at All Might with great excitement. As a European chef, there is nothing more satisfying than being praised by All Might for living up to the word hero. But Li Tian on the side was a little silent, looking at All Might, who could only encourage them afterwards. Li Tian felt extremely sad. If it was All Might who was not injured before what happened last night, they would not be needed at all. All Might would definitely have a big smile on his face, shouting, it's okay, because I'm here to solve all the villains. I went through a really fierce battle with the villain, although I didn't get hurt, but I think you should take a good rest now. Go. Take a bath to soothe your mood, and then have a good sleep. What's the matter? Let's talk about it tomorrow morning, All Might said with a grin. Yes. Green Valley responded with an excited face, and the sentence still echoed in his mind. I have lived up to the word hero. This is not what All Might once told him, that you can become a hero, but that you have lived up to the hero. I'm all ready. Can I be called a hero? Soaking in the bathtub, Green Valley was excited and at the same time a little confused, but he quickly figured it out and turned his confusion into fighting spirit. How about being called a hero or not being called a hero? His goal has always been the #1 hero in the world. Work hard. JPG in the bathroom of another room, Li Tian was also soaking in the bathtub thinking about something. Of course, he who has been incarnated as Savitar for a long time will not feel confused or tired because of what happened last night. He is just thinking. Thinking about the possessed soul that I met last night who recognized his identity, and the real villain in the original book, Sigongmong. It's really difficult. Li Tian's eyes flickered and he murmured softly. My island, somewhere in the central tower. Dr. David Hilder was looking solemnly at the few screeners in front of him who hadn't connected yet. So far, I have not set the reason why quirks appear, and I think it will not appear in a short time, so I simply set one myself. Of course, it will not affect the current main line of my hero, and it should not be beaten in the future. The face is too miserable, it's just the golden finger of the protagonist, it's officially launched. My island, somewhere in the central tower. Dr. David Hild was sitting on his seat, contemplating solemnly, looking at several screens in front of him that hadn't been connected yet. As if it had been discussed, the screens were turned on and turned on almost at the same time, but no images appeared on the screens. Dr. David, the incident on my island should not have affected the fetish over there. A somewhat old but powerful voice came from one of the screens, or the first screen. No fetish was involved. The villain who invaded this time was because my assistant was unwilling to stop the research on the Quirks amplifier in the past, so I contacted the villain for money to snatch the Quirks amplifier, device, and many other technological products. Dr. David quickly explained. It's fine if you don't come here for the fetish. The voice from the second screen was also old, but unexpectedly kind, and a kind old man's face could not help but appear in the mind. Even if they didn't come here for the fetish, but dared to invade my island to provoke, those clowns should all be swept into the garbage dump. From the screen number 3 came an equally old, but full of hostility and murderous intent. Of course, the FBI is already investigating the bases of the villain organization around the world. It will be sent to you when the time comes, and you can send someone to clean it up. The voice from the no, it's normal, but the sound makes people feel like a Philistine. The old people on several screens talked about each other, while Dr. David at the side didn't mean to intervene at all, but just sat there and listened quietly. Now is the most critical era. Life and death are just a matter of one thought. There must be no mistakes. Do you understand? The old man on the 5th screen suddenly spoke, his voice was full of iron and blood, and he heard that he was an army birth. Yes. Dr. David, who had been listening quietly, responded quickly. After a while, those screens dimmed again. Obviously the communication had been disconnected, but Dr. David didn't intend to leave. Instead, he sat in this room and struggled thinking. After a long time, he sighed, walked out with a calm face, and left the room. In my island, no one will enter this room except him. After walking out of the room, Dr. David kept walking along the passage, and whenever he walked in front of a wall, the wall would naturally rise, and then fall down when he walked by, turning into a steel wall again. After walking through countless walls of such institutions, Dr. David finally met someone. A not too old researcher in a white coat greeted Dr. David respectfully, and then left in a hurry. Dr. David didn't care. Here, everyone is so busy. Everyone has everyone's job, no surprise. And the researchers I met along the way also proved this point very well. The better ones greeted the same as the first one they met, but most of them didn't even look up at Dr. David, but walked away quickly with their heads down, muttering or thinking about something. Dr. David. Suddenly, someone stopped Dr. David. Dr. David's footsteps paused, and he turned his head to look over. It was a woman. If Li Tian were here at this time, he would be shocked to find that this woman turned out to be his aunt's best friend, Nanli Huayi. Nanli Huayi, like the surrounding researchers, put on a white coat, walked towards Dr. David, blinked her big watery eyes, and said with a pitiful face, Dr. David, I'm done with today's work. What do you want? I'll take a vacation. No. Dr. David looked at Nanli Huayi in front of him, and refused without the slightest hesitation, but his face was full of helplessness. Didn't I say it a long time ago? My island is holding an expo recently. God, try not to go out. But, doctor, you go out tomorrow. Nonli Wai complained softly. What did you say? Dr. David frowned, looked at Nonli Wai and asked. He really didn't hear clearly. Then what? Didn't say anything. Nonli Wai smiled coyly. Well, doctor, I'm not a researcher here, and I can't help here, so just let me go out and play. I knew. Dr. David said with a headache on his face. Wai, I really can't let you go out during the My Island Expo these 2 days. Look at it like this. When the expo is over, you go out and have a good time with Melissa for a few days. Okay, no problem. Hearing Dr. David's resignation, Nonli Wai agreed without the slightest hesitation, with a smile on her face. Although she was a little silly, cute, she was not unreasonable. During the expo, it has been decided not to go out unless necessary. Other doctoral researchers living on my island, some of them need to attend the expo for various reasons, so they can go out, but her Nonli Wai is not included. Moreover, she is not interested in the things exhibited at the expo. Staying here, she has long seen how many more advanced and more sci-fi props. So she will naturally not break the rules. So, she could fight for the days after the Friends of Nature fair. As it is now. Seeing the back of Nonli Wai leaving, Dr. David couldn't help but shook his head, but there was a smile on his face. For this 20-year-old man who looked more like a child than his daughter Melissa Nonli Wai, he can't be strict at all. Not to mention, Nonli Wai's work is not important, so naturally she doesn't have to stay in this lab like other researchers. Meeting Nonli Wai was just a small episode, but it made Dr. David feel a little lighter inexplicably, without the heaviness before. Perhaps, this is also one of the reasons why he is willing to open the door to Nonli Wai. David Hurd's Laboratory 1. Dr. David pushed open the door and walked in. The lights in the room were always on and would not go out. Looking up, it was involuntary astonishment. This laboratory does not have those advanced and precious instruments or strange devices as imagined. This laboratory is very small and simple, with almost no equipment, but the mysterious thing is the laboratory one side wall, however, is made entirely of glass. After closing the door, David Hilder walked to the side of the glass side wall and looked over intently. Behind the glass wall is a huge and incomparably large space, in which countless seemingly complex machines and equipment that look like props in science fiction movies are constantly running. And in the center of that pile of incomparably advanced machines is a huge gem. It is a huge golden gem with a diameter of about 5 meters, and a golden lightning flashes inside it from time to time. But he is not a gem, not even a stone, not any kind of substance on Earth. Even through the thick glass, Dr. Yin Wei's eyes flashed with love when he looked at the gem. This is not an infatuation between a man and a woman, or a love infatuation, but a scientist's infatuation with an unknown mysterious phenomenon. After a long time, Dr. David reluctantly withdrew his infatuated gaze, and there was a look of incomparable complexity in his eyes, and he sighed. It's something that people can't bear. This sigh contains complex emotions that cannot be described in words. Even in this secret laboratory built under my island, few people have extremely complicated emotions. Divine object is what all of them call Shi Jin Shi. A scientist can call it a fetish, naturally, because he is a gift from God. Hundreds of years ago, when this world was just an ordinary everyday world, it fell from the sky and fell into the center of the Pacific Ocean. And after that, what is known to ordinary people? The advent of the extraordinary period. That's right. All kinds of reasons for the opening of the supernormal era are being circulated all over the world. In fact, they have already been discovered long ago. That's his coming. This was discovered when the countries that had gradually stabilized began to search for the cause of the supernormal after decades of the beginning of the supernormal era. It is said that it caused quite a large-scale battle among countries at that time, and even almost caused a war. But later, I don't know why the countries joined forces to conduct research together, and no one country monopolizes it. My island was established at that time. However, the reason why my island was established at that time was to study this fetish and how to shield its divine power. But after decades of research on this goal, the only research result of my island on this fetish is that it has been confirmed that quirks indeed appeared under his influence. As for shielding its power, it has been failing. As for why its power should be shielded, Quirk's singularity, or Quirk's Big Bang, was not only discovered by the doctors of the League of Villains. As early as decades ago, people with foresight had already discovered this point. From the weak when quirks first appeared in this world to how powerful it is now, the evolution is too fast. At that time, there was such a saying that quirks is a kind of germ. The reason why humans are harmless now is that millions of years of evolution have allowed humans to resist and even achieve symbiosis to a certain extent. But sooner or later, when the evolution of quirks when it catches up with the achievements of human evolution over millions of years, it is the time when bacteria-like quirks break out. At that time, human beings will usher in destruction, and the world will usher in destruction. But some people say that the reason why quirks evolve so fast is because he is referring to the genes that have evolved over a million years in the human body. When he is equal to humans, that is when the rapid evolution of quirks stops. There will be the end of humanity. But no matter what kind of statement it is, it was strictly controlled at that time, and it was strictly prohibited from flowing into the people. Otherwise, the doomsday theory with the word science will definitely destroy the fragile society that was just born at that time without mercy. Decades have passed. Now there have been some signs around the world, some signs that the evolution of quirks has surpassed the limits of human beings. And this undoubtedly proves that the theory of destruction is correct. Therefore, now the world's high-level leaders have been divided into three major factions, or three ways of dealing with it. Is the original goal of my island, to shield the power of the fetish so that it will not affect ring the world. The second is to find a way to speed up the evolution of human beings, so that they can catch up with the rapidly evolving quirks in turn. The third is to send this sacred item on the rocket and send it directly away from the Earth, so that the other party is far away and will not affect the world. Regardless of whether it is one or two, it is currently the goal of the secret laboratory of my island. As for the third, the rocket that shoulders the heavy responsibility has already been prepared, waiting for the arrival of the last moment. According to predictions, 10 years is the final deadline. If it is too late, then dealing with the sporadic quirks runaway incidents around the world will become the main task that Hero will face in the future. 3 ways. David Hild couldn't help but laugh at himself when he thought of the 3 ways that have been passed down among the human race. Seems to be 3 ways. But in fact, there is only the third way, and sending the gods away from the Earth is the only way to survive. So far, the most advanced equipment in their research institute can barely shield people from quirks. It is simply impossible to shield gods in 10 years. Not to mention accelerating the evolution of human beings so that they can catch up with the fast-evolving quirks. This is simply not something that current human technology can do. Therefore, although my island is still researching unremittingly, the schedule of flying the gods away from the Earth has already been set, just 2 years later. It's just. The only problem with this way of life is, after the fetish is sent away from the Earth, will the supernatural society that was born under its influence slowly return to normal life after it leaves? Although compared to the chaotic supernormal world, the once daily world was peaceful and safe. Those who want to go back to that era are, after all, only the voices of a few people. Even Dr. David, although looking forward to world peace, doesn't want quirks to disappear. You know, what he has worked hard for half his life to study are all quirks. Really? Can't I keep you? Dr. David looked at the fetish on the other side, stroking the glass wall with his right hand, his eyes blurred, and he murmured softly. In that empty room, the fetishes were fixed in the midair, in which the thunderbolts like small snakes kept wandering, and the fetishes like golden jewels were radiant and charming. Under the night sky, the mirror-like moon hangs in the sky, and the moonlight as clear as running water pours down on the Earth. On the Earth, the lights of thousands of families are dotted and bright. Call. A black shadow streaked across the sky. It was an extremely illusory shadow, humanoid, with a blurry face, and the face could not be seen clearly. But if Li Tian was here at this time, he would definitely be able to recognize that this shadow was the possessed soul who had seen through his true identity. The black shadow pierced through the void, and instantly disappeared into the countless dotted lights below. The overlapping lights made people dizzy, and it was hard to see the exact direction. Puff in a dark room with no lights on, the soul possessed by the soul directly submerged into a man lying on the bed. The man stood up suddenly, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. The light projected from the window on one side reflected on this figure. This is a young man in his 20s. His unremarkable face is extremely pale and haggard at this time, but under the light, his eyes are full of viciousness and madness. This person is the body with the soul. Injure my spirit body, damn it, damn it. Possessed a soulful look of resentment, his pale face was filled with engraved hatred, but there was a trace of lingering fear in the depths of his resentful eyes. This is the first time his spirit body has been injured since he awakened the quirks from the soul and ran wildly. And Still such a serious injury. The possessed spirit has never felt such a serious feeling of weakness, not to mention using quirks again. Even sitting up, in a short while, his head is already dizzy, and he wants to fall asleep all the time. Damn it. I've tried it before, and no attack can hurt my spirit body. Why can that guy's lightning hurt me? While the soul-possessed spirit was filled with resentment and fear, killing intent rose in his heart. How did he know that what Li Tian used was not thunder and lightning in the conventional sense, but the power generated by the speed force in the non-stop collision and friction of the world? If it wasn't for Li Tian, he might run too fast and not be able to store up too much energy. If there are too many, one blow can wipe out his soul and body. The spirit body that can hurt me must die. That guy must die. The eyelids of the soul were fighting, and the heart was roaring madly, and he began to think of poisonous schemes in his mind. It is the first time that the possessed soul who has always enjoyed playing in the world and regards everyone as a toy has such a strong killing intent towards a person. Then, eyelids closed, completely fainted. His soul has been severely injured one after another, and he can return safely because his soul is already full of resilience. On the other side, not too far from my island, a small ferry broke down on the sea about 20 or 30 nautical miles away. On board. Da Lang, you said why the adults haven't come back yet. Something must have happened, a villain suddenly said with his companion on duty beside him. Ba ba ba, crow's mouth. The villain known as Da Lang rolled his eyes. Master Corey's quirks are so strong. Standing still makes all of us unable to break our mouths for a day. Gold chain. As far as your words are concerned, if an adult hears, he will definitely throw you down to feed the fish. Hey, my fault, my fault. Jin Lian also reflected, shrinking his neck, carefully looked around, and said with a smile after finding no one else, I'm just too worried. Didn't your lord say to start action at 8:30 before? Now it's already 8:35, and your lord's action should start. 5 minutes is enough for what? Even if it's that, wouldn't it take 10 minutes? Da Lang curled his lips. 5 minutes is enough for me. Jin Lian muttered inarticulately. The voice was so small that the sky didn't hear it. That's my island. There are more than one good thing. Let me tell you, it will take at least half an hour for the adults to move back. At that time, even if we don't deal with it, even if we move things, it will be inevitable afterwards. Reward. Da Lang clicked his tongue, a rippling smile appeared on his face. Reward. Jin Lian also showed a rippling face, and his whole body became hot. Even the cold sea breeze at night was nothing. Sudden. Da Lang, look quickly. Jin Lian's expression froze suddenly, and he pointed to the deck not far away and said. Huh. What? Da Lang casually raised his eyes and looked over. A cloud of mist blacker than the pitch-black night appeared on the deck not far away. This is Master Kurogiri's quirks? Master Kurogiri is back. The two were startled, and then they hurriedly prepared to go forward to greet them. However, is something wrong? The footsteps of the two were startled. They also saw Master Kurogiri's quirks open the portal, when Master Kurogiri only opened the small portal. As predicted, the footsteps of the two just paused, and the purple-black mist dissipated out of thin air, leaving only a dark thing in place. What is that? Dowling and Jinlian looked at each other, and after a quick notification, they activated quirks, and scales appeared on Dalang's body, making him look like a monster, while Jinlian's hands turned into huge sharp iron needles, and then walked up cautiously. After walking in, with the help of the moonlight, the two of them saw clearly what that dark thing was. Head? This is. Both Da Lang and Jin Lian's legs went limp at the same time, and they fell to the ground. Master Corey. On the deck, a group of villains surrounded Corey's head with ugly faces. You mean, the head of Corey was sent over by Kurogiri? A dead Karaki's deep voice came from a mobile phone. Yes. Among the villain, two witnesses, Dowling and Jinlian, replied tremblingly. At that time, we saw a small group of purple-black mist, and then soon it disappeared, leaving only Lord Corey's head in place. Kurogiri. What does he mean? Lying in the laboratory, Sigong Muhong suddenly opened his eyes, with a gloomy expression on his face. He had no idea that Kurogiri, who possessed teleportation quirks, could not lead people to escape, but only sent ahead. I'm afraid, this operation, the black mist is more ominous. It's a pity, sending quirks is very rare. On the side, the doctor shook his head with emotion, and then asked, is there anything strange about that Corey's head? A strange place. The villain on the deck were startled, and turned to look at the bloody head on the ground. Master Corey seems to have a weird device on his head, someone said uncertainly. Weird device? That's it. Bring it back with Corey's head. The doctor nodded and said. Wait a minute. Sigongmu stopped suddenly, and said with a solemn face, before you come back, check the car carefully to see if there are any positioning devices on the head and the device. Yes. Although a little confused, the villain responded quickly. Hang up the phone. Are you worried that there is something wrong with the things Kurogiri sent back? The doctor was not surprised and asked casually. Regardless of whether there is a problem or not, check it first. After all, it is something sent by Kurogiri, Shigaraki said in a deep voice. The doctor on the side shrugged helplessly. This should be the so-called, once bitten by a snake and afraid of well ropes for 10 years. In August, the wind is no longer so gentle, but sweeps across the earth with irritating heat. For students from any country in the world, the fiery August is undoubtedly a relaxing day, summer vacation. However, Hero Academy, the AB class of Hero Department, has ushered in Forest Training Camp. No way. There are still some people in Class A who fail subjects and need tutoring. And there are still so many? It's really unscientific? Isn't Class A supposed to be better than Class B? There are still so many people failing subjects? It was still Wu Ji and Ningren's harsh provocative voice. Obviously last time, Li Tian's lesson did not make the other party repent. Boom. The monitor of Class B, Kazuyo Kento, is still proficient in swordsmanship, and said with a grumpy face, what qualifications do you have to say that, you failed guy? And there are people in our class, laughing at 50 steps. It's not interesting. Squad leader, he has fainted in the monogami, and can't hear your preaching. Kakutori Pony complained in a weird Japanese. Don't worry, he can hear it. Kento Kazuyo waved his hand while carrying the fainted Mujian Ningren, and said that his hand knife had already been practiced to the point where he would knock down Mujian without losing it. The mystical realm of consciousness. Sorry, Class A, this guy's dark personality hasn't been cured yet. Kento Kazuyo apologized to everyone in Class A. It doesn't matter, we are almost used to it. Yaoyorozu Wan, who is also the class monitor, waved his hand with a smile and said helplessly. As soon as this remark came out, everyone in Class B was ashamed, and there was a touch of maliciousness in their eyes when they looked at Wujian. Noticing this, everyone in Class A couldn't help but startled, and then many people's eyes lit up. It can't be Bye-Bye, who took revenge on that dark guy with one sentence. Jiro joked with admiration. In case Yaoyorozu looked confused, what did she do? Great job, Bye-Bye, Uraraka also shouted excitedly. As expected of our monitor, Ashido also joked with a smile. Student Yaoyorozu Wan, she's not this. LVGU, who didn't understand, wanted to explain for Yaoyorozu Wan. However, before Green Valley could finish speaking, Iida, who was on the side, suddenly opened his eyes, pushed his glasses and began to explain in a serious manner. That's why, using simple words to separate villain, revenge without bloodshed and not involving yourself at the same time, this kind of speaking skills is also the basic quality that professional hero need to have. I'm not. Don't talk nonsense. Yaoyorozu Wan panicked instantly, shaking his head and waving his hands to explain. A black belly like a textbook. Li Tian also interjected at the right time. I just don't know if Li Tian is talking about Yaoyorozu Wan, or the really good classmate Iida. It's just a joke, so naturally no one will really take it seriously, not even Class B. And after a while, Aizawa Shota and Bradkin, the head teachers of Class AB, also came over, and led their students to board the bus to the training place in the forest. This time the forest training camp was quite mysterious. Unlike Xiangying's previous fixed training camp, they chose another place that no one knew about. Before the day of departure, even Aizawa Shota and Class B's head teacher Bradkin didn't know the specific training location. On the bus. Li Tian, I heard that you made a big fuss on my island during the summer vacation. Kirishima, who didn't go to my island during the summer vacation, looked at everyone curiously and said. It's not a big fuss. Li Tian thought for a while and replied, from the beginning to the end, it seems that the villain were all settled in less than 10 minutes. You are the only one who doesn't think it's a big fuss. After experiencing a difficult battle on my island, and facing the pressure of the villain, everyone made a big fuss together. Helpless face. 1. At that time we thought there was a real bomb, but we all stayed in the hotel and didn't go out, Siro said with a depressed face. Beside him, Shoji and Sato also nodded. They were both on my island at the time, but after hearing the order, they obediently returned to the hotel and did not go out. Even after playing in my island for several days, they still returned to the hotel. When I arrived at Nihon, I learned from the reported news that they had encountered a villain invasion that day, and they were taken hostage in disguise. As for the matter of my classmates solving the villain, they only found out after returning to school. How could this make them not depressed? It's really bad luck. My island, a place where there has never been a villain incident, unexpectedly happened on the 10th day we went. Lu Zhang also said sullenly complained. At first, I wanted to take advantage of the large number of people in the expo to find Bai Bai and the others, but after a few days, they were all strictly investigated, and there was no way to get in. Quack. Asui on the side looked dazed and mixed in. Are you talking in front of the old? Pooh. What are you talking about? Why can't she understand at all? Ashido Mina. Aizawa Shota, who sat at the front, turned black, and looked directly at Ashido with bloodshot eyes. Feeling Aizawa Shota's gaze, Ashido froze, and begged for mercy 3 times in an instant. Mr. Aizawa, I was wrong. I dare not. I will never do it again. WW. Li Tian, Lagu, Boom, Iida, Yaoyorozu Wan, Yi Yin, Uraraka, Jiro, Kaminari, Mineta. If you guys hadn't been pleading for you on behalf of All Might, and you were on my island again, just this time I can expel you all directly. Aizawa Shota said with a cold face, humming. Forehead. When the people who were named heard Aizawa Shota's words, none of them were afraid. Instead, they stuck out their tongues and made faces at Aizawa Shota, who was facing away from them. In the next semester under Aizawa Shota, although they couldn't see through Aizawa Shota's reasonable hypocrisy, they could already tell what Aizawa Shota looked like when he was angry. And when the mouth is hard, what does it look like? Now that he is like this, he is obviously not angry. Maybe he has a proud face when he learns about this matter. On the bus, the atmosphere quickly became joyful, singing, chatting and playing games. Everyone was so happy that it was like attending a summer camp. Sitting at the front, listening to the cheerful voice behind, Aizawa Shota showed a sullen smile on his face. Let's just laugh as much as you want now, and you won't even have the strength to cry after a while. After driving for about an hour, the bus stopped in an open space beside the road in the wilderness. Get off the bus quickly. Aizawa Shota stood at the bus door, shouted impatiently, and then led the way down. This doesn't seem like a parking lot. Beside the window, Yi Yin looked strangely at the open space outside the window and the cliff beside it. It's not the parking lot, so it can only be the destination. The location of the forest training camp, but we haven't been told yet. Li Tian said casually from the side. Looking at the large Lin Yi land outside the window, Li Tian probably guessed that this training camp in the forest might not be too different from the original book. However, this time the League of Villains should not be involved. Li Tian chuckled lightly in his heart. The plot was completely messed up by him. If he can still get back on track, then Li Tian will have there is nothing to say. After getting out of the car, Li Tian looked at the mountains in the distance, took a deep breath, and smiled on his face. I hope this special training can go on from beginning to end. Heroes Forest Training Camp was set up to strengthen the students' quirks. Needless to say, it is important to the growth of the students. Will be stronger than 10 chips. After everyone got off the bus, no matter how dull they were, they might be able to see that this was not a parking lot. Mr. Aizawa, is this our destination? Where is the camp for the camp? Why didn't you see it? Ashido asked, looking around vigorously. Don't worry, there is still a distance to the destination. But the bus will not be able to get in for the rest of the journey, Aizawa Shota said lightly. Can't the bus go in? There were no stupid people present. Hearing Aizawa Shota's words, some people instinctively looked towards the endless mountains and forests in the distance. Looking at the vast green jungle everywhere, and not seeing the slightest shadow of the camp, everyone showed a look of astonishment. Could it be that this is to make them run through the forest? Yo, Eraser, it's been a long time no see. Suddenly someone behind the crowd greeted Aizawa Shota. Hearing the sound, everyone who was looking at the sea of trees in the distance couldn't help but look back. Li Tian seems to be in the past. Hey, acquaintance. Keep your eyes open. Cute cat bazooka. Wild. Pussycats. The 2 30-year-old Aunt Mandalay cats and North American shorthair cats were full of vitality, and they put on a shameful pose and shouted loudly. The corners of Li Tian's mouth twitched at the sidelines. Only a person in the second dimension could present such shameful actions and lines without changing his expression. And the moment the two appeared on the stage, Green Valley, who knew the professional hero like the back of his hand, instantly became excited, and quickly shared the information he knew about the Pussycat group under the dumbfounded but natural eyes of everyone. including the brutal fact that they have been active in the industry for 12 years. In front of women, age is mentioned, especially in front of women who start to care about age. Then, Li Tian didn't feel lucky at all. Green Valley, you've been beaten. They are responsible for taking care of everyone this time. Professional hero, Pussy Gats. Aizawa Shota on the side completely ignored his own students who were beaten up and said. They are responsible for taking care of everyone this time. Professional hero, Pussy Gats. Aizawa Shota on the side completely ignored his own students who were beaten up and said. Hi, students. The North American Shorthair Cat greeted everyone with a smile. If it wasn't for his fist just pulling out of Green Valley's face, everyone would definitely think that this is a very kind ant. Okay, there is plenty of time for gossip in the next few days, and now. All students, please rush to your campsite first. Mandalay Cat looked at the crowd and said, pointing to the mountain bag in the distance. At the other end of this mountain forest, at the foot of that mountain is your campsite. It's 9:30. If you don't arrive before 12:30, you won't be hungry. At the foot of that mountain. Everyone looked at the somewhat blurred hill from afar. Ahaha. The camp is still so far away. Let's go back to the car first, Kaminari said, turning around and going to the bus. Yes. Yes. There is still such a long way to go. Let the driver drive quickly. Putao also echoed with an awkward smile, turned and walked to the bus. Boom. Boom. The ground under everyone's feet suddenly swelled up, and the mud and rocks turned into waves of soil, and all the people standing on the ground were thrown out. What happened? The sudden scene made everyone unable to react. It's the Quirks dirt flow for North American Shorthairs. Occupational hero Encyclopedia Green Valley shouted in midair and at the same time instinctively covered the whole area with one for all, stabilizing his figure in midair. I don't care whose quirks this is, come and save me. In midair, Kaminari's melodious screams resounded through the sky. Not only Kaminari, almost all of the few people who were not sure that they could land from a high altitude safely, screamed loudly. Everyone, the training camp has already begun. If you don't arrive at the camp before 12 o'clock, you will have nothing to eat. Looking at the students in the sky, Aizawa Shota crouched on the spot to maintain his balance, and he did not slow down. He yelled quietly. Mr. Aizawa, help! In midair, Ashido screamed for help and fell down the cliff together with the others. Everyone. In midair, LVGU looked at the falling students, with a look of anxiety on his face. He quickly raised his hand to pick up Uraraka, and then threw it to the other Asui, and then everyone shout out. Student Uraraka, help everyone eliminate gravity. Student Asui, try to pull the students who can't fly over. Yes. Uraraka, who was still flustered, also reacted after hearing what Green Valley said. Her quirks have no gravity. Why should I be afraid of falling? In midair, Asui also struggled to regain his balance, and the tongue in his mouth bounced, pulling Jiro, Yaoyorozu Wan, Kaminari in the grape holding Kaminari's thigh. In such a short period of time, with Asui's speed, at most, he could only pull these students who were closer to him. Ka-jong. Green Valley shouted again at this time. No, order me. Bakugo yelled angrily, but the palms of his palms exploded instantly, and flashed in midair one after another, throwing Kirishima, Iida, Aoyama, Ashido and Liju over there. As for the others, Siro's tape has been wrapped around the stone bump on the side dodge, and the tape of the other hand is even wrapped around Sato Rakido, and the tentacles behind Shoji have also spread out, like a hang glider, and the speed has dropped sharply glide down and fly away. Tokiyami's black shadow has kept Tokiyami himself flying in the sky, even holding Ojiro's big tail, and the flames from the left side of Hong's body sprayed, only a few times in succession. The falling speed has reached a safe speed. As for Li Tian, he had already entered the super speed mode at the moment of takeoff, pulled Yi Yin and rushed directly to the bottom of the cliff along the mud and rocks. Not bad. Li Tian looked up at the students who had saved themselves in the sky, with a smile on his face. He also stopped his speed force, and was not going to go up to help rescue. Boom. That big lump of soil was not as capable as everyone else, and it was the first to fall into the forest. Only then did the people following them land on the soil. This is Green Valley, who fell with his strong physical fitness without deceleration means, was undoubtedly the first one to land. The moment he landed on the dirt, his entire calf and arms sank directly, his face suddenly, there was a hint of enlightenment. Solution. At this time, Uraraka, who was floating in the mud, was approaching the limit, and couldn't help but put his hands together, and the weightlessness was instantly released. Everyone who was already at a safe distance felt gravity again. Then they all fell into the chaos. Ah, it's so dirty, I just washed my school uniform. The few girls who couldn't maintain their balance in the weightless state fell into the mud at the moment they were lifted, and wailed suddenly. For this forest training camp, they didn't bring too many changes of clothes. So that's how it is. Even if you don't do it, you won't get hurt with this layer of soft soil. He fell into the soil, looked at the soft mud and rocks under him, and said softly. On the other side, Bakugo was flying non-stop with both palms blasting. Naturally, he would not land here, but landed on the ground. Shoji also gliding and flew to the ground on the side before stopping. Naturally, Tokiyami, needless to say, the black shadow hugged him and flew. When it reaches the ground, it falls with its tail. And Zero too, after putting Sato down, the tape on his right hand was wrapped around the trees in the forest, and he was pulled out of the dirt area directly. Really, it should be said that he is a person invited by the school. It's as weird as the school, and this kind of surprise attack. Returning to the Forest of Warcraft, this second name. Almost the whole person, they were all stuck in the mud, and Putao climbed out depressingly and complained. What's the use of complaining? Are there still so many strange things like Shangli? Go through the level honestly. I don't want to be hungry and have no lunch. Kaminari stood up from the dirt and scratched his hair full of dirt, said helplessly. Putao had just crawled out of the dirt pit. When he raised his head, a monster with a big mouth and no eyes and nose was right in front of him. He trembled in fright and screamed, "Demon! Monster!" Above the cliff, the ground calmed down again. What a group of cute babies, they react super fast, and their movements are very handsome. The Mandalay cat stood on the cliff and looked at the people falling down by various means, and his eyes lit up. Barely passing. Too slack after landing. Aizawa Shota said, neither sad nor happy. Haha. That's because you were too strict. They are just a group of babies, let's go. Go back to the camp to rest for a while, and then start preparing dinner for your students. Mandalay cat said with a smile. The Forest of Warcraft below is not as simple as it looks. Although there are no beasts and poisonous insects, it is full of earth warcraft made by North American shorthair cats and quirks. Although the individual strength is weak, they come and go in groups. It's not that easy to get along with each other. Aizawa Shota still looks weak, but in his heart, he doesn't think his students need to arrive at the camp at night. It's about 3 or 4 o'clock, Aizawa Shota said silently. However, you teacher is really too much to contact us to prepare for such a strict assessment. The Mandalay cat patted Aizawa Shota on the shoulder and laughed. After all, chaos is emerging in this era, and you want to get a temporary qualification certificate that you can only get in the 2nd grade, so you can only exaggerate a little. Aizawa Shota said weakly. Leave it to me. The North American shorthair cat grinned, showing a sinister smile on his face. How dare you say that I'm a weirdo, and I'm still a sophomore, so I won't treat you well. Sorry for your exuberance. Ah. North American shorthair cat. The Mandalay cat shouted angrily with a black hair. Even Aizawa Shota's eyes twitched. Whatever you want. It's just a pile of clods, there's no need to be scared like this. Because the earth monster appeared not far from Li Tian, and instantly entered the rapid mode. Looking helplessly at the screaming Putao, he said. Claude. Claude? Grape's squeal paused. Just now he was taken aback by the monster that suddenly appeared in front of him, so he didn't react. Now he took a closer look at the monster whose body was smashed by Li Tian. What else could it be if it wasn't a clod? It turned out to be just a clod of dirt. The other students who were frightened by Putao's screams and the hideous monster immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone be careful. This is the ultimate skill of North American shorthair cats, earth monsters. Green Valley shouted loudly as his face was still nervous. If it's soil, there's nothing to be afraid of, just punch one. Ashido waved his fists vigorously, laughing. No, it's not. Green Valley shouted hastily. The maximum number of earth monsters that North American shorthair cats can control at the same time is. Roar. Ow! In the forest, beast roars sounded one after another, and monsters with different appearances came out of the forest and surrounded everyone. It's 89. Green Valley's dry voice fell. However, the faces of the people surrounded by a group of monsters were all pale. 89. Green Valley, are you kidding me? Kaminari looked at the densely packed ferocious earth monsters around him, and suddenly felt his voice was a little hoarse. This. The North American shorthair cat's record a year ago. Moreover, these earth monsters are just the product of Quirk's influence. If the North American shorthair cat is not defeated, it will not really die and disappear. As Green Valley spoke, he also felt his throat itching, and looked at the ferocious monsters around him, and couldn't help but let out a grunt. Listen to Green Valley's explanation. Not to mention the other students, even the proudest Bakugo and Gao Lang's expressions changed, and the corners of Li Tian's mouth twitched. Will the North American short-hair cat die and disappear? Isn't this TM cheating? Run! Run! Someone yelled, and immediately, everyone present counted as one, and all of them ran away like crazy. Don't say yes, even Li Tian activated the rapid mode and rushed out. Although these earth monsters are not very difficult for him, but a good tiger can't stand the pack of wolves, especially when the pack of wolves jumps out one by one while they are still dead. It is completely meaningless to do it blindly. Everyone try not to run away, and unite to break out in the direction of the camp. During the run, Iida suddenly shouted. Naturally, there were not many stupid people among the crowd. Although they ran away in a hurry, they all rushed out in the direction of the camp. As soon as Iida shouted, everyone separated into groups in 2s and 3s to get together, and then everyone moved quickly in one direction. The ones rushing to the forefront are undoubtedly Li Tian, Green Valley, Bakugo and the 4 of them. Rushing to the front, Li Tian didn't intend to enter the Speed Force mode with all his strength and rush directly to the camp. Instead, he just used the speed mode and combined with Green Valley Bakugo and Hong to transform into a sharp knife and rush towards the surrounding area. The group of earth monsters will open the way for the students behind. Needless to say, there are many monsters blocking the direction of the camp. Under the control of the North American short-hair cats, there are naturally the most. With a glance, almost all the trees on the ground in the forest are full of ferocious monsters. Go to hell. Bakugo rushed to the front and rushed directly in front of the group of earth monsters. With a look of excitement on his face, he aimed his right palm directly at a monster. The explosion roared. The attacked earth monster almost shattered in response, because half of its body was blasted into pieces. The sound of the explosion seemed to be the horn of battle. The students collided directly with the group of earth monsters. A dazzling super melee has begun. Bakugo, be careful not to use the explosion to cause a forest fire. Iida, the most central member of the team, who was guarding and supporting a few students who were not strong in combat, shouted loudly. I've said it all, don't order me. Bakugo roared, and the palm of his right hand was directly attached to the body of a king monster. Boom. With a loud noise, the earth monster was instantly fired like a cannonball, smashing several earth monsters to pieces. Bakugo. Iida's face changed slightly and he wanted to remind again. Don't worry, Iida-kun. LVGU, with the power of one for all entwined all over his body, shattered an earth monster with one punch, and said with a serious face, although Kachan has been using explosions, but every time it will detonate only after the palm of the hand is close to the earth monster, and the flames of the explosion are all on the earth monster, so it will not cause a fire. As soon as Lu Gu's voice fell, he jumped directly to dodge the earth monster that had been rushing towards him, and shattered its head with a volley. This. Iida was startled, and subconsciously looked at Bakugo. Sure enough, after careful observation, he noticed that from the beginning of the battle to the present, Bakugo has almost never used long-range explosive attacks, and all of them are detonated at close range. Although I admire Iida-san for your seriousness and dedication, but we are all working hard towards the professional hero. On the side, he said coldly, the ice stretched under his right foot, and he was standing beside the earth monster. It shot up directly into the sky and turned into ice spikes, making it lose its ability to move. The left half of the body is slightly warm, relieving the coldness of the right half of the body, but there is no trace of flame. Iida couldn't help but look around after hearing the words, and after scanning around, Iida suddenly realized that even if he didn't remind those students that the quirks would cause fires, all of them were different. Even Kaminari and Aoyama tried their best to dodge with the help of other students, instead of using electric shocks and laser attacks. Even if they were forced to attack, Hong would fly over with a blast of freezing air to deal with the aftermath. Everyone. Iida felt ashamed of himself, but also proud of his classmates. What is that guy Iida doing? How dare he get distracted during the battle? Li Tian blocked the earth monsters that attacked Iida several times in succession, and looked helplessly at Iida, who had regained his energy and even became more passionate. Forget it. Li Tian shook his head. He didn't care about Iida's distraction in the battle just now. Now is not the time to talk about it. He will tell him when he has time. Maintaining the rapid mode, Li Tian's every move is 10 times or even 10 times faster than other students, so although the big melee at this time is quite fierce, to Li Tian, it is still like slow motion. Scanning the audience, Li Tian accurately grasped every movement on the battlefield, Frowning slightly, Li Tian's excellent vision allowed him to clearly see the soil rising from the ground and turning into statues in the corner of the jungle, in the distance the scene where the earth monsters rush out. The number of earth monsters has been increasing, and it hasn't decreased much. It seems that this is what Green Valley said, and the earth monsters will not disappear until the North American short-hair cat is defeated. Li Tian thought to himself. Of course, he doesn't think that this kind of earth monster can really be endless. No one can use quirks all the time. If this continues like this, Li Tian believes that it won't take long to make the North American short-hair cat quirks hit the limit. But before that, it was definitely his classmates who were consumed to death. It looks like I really underestimated this woman. Li Tian thought to himself. The last time he saw the North American short-hair cat and ragdoll cat being caught, although he didn't say it in his heart, he actually looked down on these two professional women hero. But the current scene is a good illustration of the previous situation, but the opponent's battlefield is not suitable. In a city full of reinforced concrete, there is no way to find enough soil in a short time to make earth monsters or control soil flow. Fighting. Everyone, don't be entangled by these earth monsters. The number of the opponent is always replenishing. If it is exhausted, our physical strength will not be able to support the camp. Break out as soon as possible. Green Valley shouted loudly, reminding everyone. In fact, without Green Valley shouting, the surrounding students also noticed it. Under the entanglement of this group of earth monsters, everyone can already feel that their physical strength is exhausted. Damn, this group of pestering fellows. Kirishima maintained his whole body hardened, and punched the earth monster in front of him into a ball of mud with a vigorous punch. However, 2 or 3 earth monsters rushed over one after another. Come out. These guys are too haunting, there's no way to get rid of them. Ashido's acid rotted an earth monster in two and shouted. We are completely surrounded, croak. Asui jumped and dodged among the big trees, and his flexible head shot ejected and pulled out the students who were surrounded. Bastard. Bakugo let out a low voice, pressed his hands against the earth monster and directly blasted it into pieces. At the same time, he flew up and dodged in the blast wind. His face changed color slightly. Although it was very faint, he could already feel his own pain. His hands had already started to feel a little numb. Asterisk 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 asterisk. The frequency of using explosions is too high. Bakugo thought to himself, looking at the crowds of earth monsters below in midair with a livid face. In fact, with his quirks, he could easily leave the battlefield if he wanted to, retreating while fighting, but Bakugo looked at Green Valley, who was punching an earth monster over there, and kept helping other students out of the siege, snorted coldly, rushed into the group of earth monsters, and started attacking non-stop. Boom. Li Tian shouted loudly. On the side, Hong, who was piercing through the earth monster with an ice thorn, looked at Li Tian. I'll break up this group of earth monsters later. You take the opportunity to suppress those guys and let the students retreat. Nu. Bang instantly understood what Li Tian meant, and the ice on his right half of his body instantly began to gather strength and prepare. Call. Li Tian looked at the densely packed earth monsters around him, and with a thought, he activated the speed force with all his strength, and the rapid mode changed instantly. As if time stood still. Speed force mode, on. Li Tian exerted force under his feet, and flew in this area in an instant. A Li Tian's fist print appeared on the head of every earth monster, and it began to collapse, and spread towards the body at an extremely slow speed. Whoosh! In an instant, the whole world returned to its original state. The dozens of earth monsters that were entangled with everyone in class collapsed instantly, turning into balls of mud and piled up in the forest. Boom. At this moment, a huge iceberg that had been ready to go for a long time suddenly rose up, suppressing all the positions where the group of earth monsters were located. Let's go now. Li Tian said loudly in the rapid mode. The crowd reacted quickly, and the previous conversation between Li Tian and Hong did not avoid them. At the moment when the monster collapsed and the iceberg stood still, they all stepped on the icy ground and rushed towards the camp, deep into the jungle. No reminder needed at all. On the edge of the cliff, the North American shorthair cat controlling the battle of the Earth Warcraft is condescending, looking at the huge iceberg that can be seen clearly even from here, with a hint of surprise in its eyes. This year's baby is really outstanding, meow. Deep in the mountains, in front of the camp. Are they really coming soon? Well, it's a lot faster than expected. It can't be a North American shorthair cat, please let it go. The Mandalay cat on the side joked with a smile. How could it be, meow? Not only did I not release the water, but I almost tried my best this time. The children in this class are really outstanding. The North American Shorthair cat pinched its waist and said angrily, and they are rare and full of experience, and they are not afraid of fighting at all. It is not an eraser. What kind of excessive training did you give them in advance? Aizawa Shota was expressionless. No, it's just that they were not so lucky and had a little more experience. Bad luck. Mandalay cats and North American Shorthair cats are both stunned. As professional hero, they naturally know what kind of bad luck is needed to accumulate experience. The atmosphere was silent for a while. The North American Shorthair cat scratched its head and said without words. Speaking of luck, in fact, all of us are not so lucky this year. The impact of All Might's retirement is too great, and the tightest work is so busy that I can't find time to date at all. The North American Shorthair sighed and complained. Yours not called a date, but a blind date, the Mandalay cat said quietly. The North American Shorthair looked at the Mandalay cat resentfully, asking if it was hard to tear it apart. The three of them chatted here. There was a sound from the forest on the other side of the clearing. Rustle, haggard figures walked out of the forest, and all 20 members of Class A walked out of the forest of monsters. No one was injured, but almost everyone was exhausted and embarrassed due to the excessive use of quirks dry enough. From 9:30 in the morning to 3:50 in the afternoon, it took a full 6 hours and 20 minutes more. Although these 6 hours did not require the use of quirks to fight all the time, but counting the time spent on the road, everyone had no time to rest, and they had to guard against the earth monsters that came from nowhere, and their spirit was far stronger than their bodies. Also tired. That is to say, Li Tian is a little bit better. No matter how long he uses his speed force, he will not be too tired, but he often uses the speed force for boring exercises. Mentally, this level is for Li Tian, it's nothing. But even so, the only difference between him and other students at this time is that he looks energetic, and his clothes and hair are similar to other students. Just one word, dirty and smelly. Everyone, it's almost 4 o'clock. It looks like you haven't had lunch. Although the North American Shorthair cat was amazed at the speed at which they came out, it smiled and sarcastically. Lunch? I just want to throw myself on the bed and sleep till dawn. Ashido yelled weakly. Sleep? That's not allowed. To sleep and rest too early is a waste of good time. Mandelmo stepped forward and said with a smile, there is still a Hell-style special training waiting for you tonight. What? Everyone exclaimed in alarm, each with a look of astonishment. Special training? Hell-style special training? This is a bit too much. Li Tian couldn't help frowning. He's okay. Today's level is nothing, but his classmates definitely used quirks too much today. Continue to be special in terms of training, not to mention becoming stronger. It is good not to leave hidden wounds. Just kidding. Ah. The Mandalay cat laughed loudly. Seeing how weak you are, I just want to cheer you up. Everyone is looking at the Mandalay cat, who is only smiling. Is this a way to cheer up? Stop making trouble. The bus is behind the camp. Go get your luggage, take a shower and come out to prepare your dinner tonight. Mrs. Shang Jia, who was on the 10 side, pointed to the back of the camp and said. Take your luggage? Didn't you say that the bus can't come in? I imagine several scenes of teachers and you walking here on foot with a lot of luggage on a sad face. Li Tian curled his lips and said. With Li Tian's voice, a scene full of pictures appeared in everyone's minds. Puff. Ha ha. Li Tian, you really know how to have fun while suffering. Teacher, I think you've lied to us again. In our hearts, Mr. Aizawa's credibility has been declining rapidly. Iida stood up and criticized seriously. Aizawa Shota stared at Li Tian with a pair of dead fish eyes. Very well. I still have the strength to entertain myself now. It seems that your training plan is a bit light. I will work overtime tonight to work out your new training program. What? No. Aizawa-sensei, we were wrong. Everyone who was originally hippie and smiling suddenly turned into a bitter haha. By the way, the bus was carried by the earth monster. Aizawa Shota paused, said something to everyone, and then walked into the room without looking back. The remaining people looked at each other in blank dismay, each with their heads downcast. Mr. Aizawa, he won't really strengthen the original Hell-style special training, Yi Yin said weakly, raising his hand. Probably not. Aizawa-sensei won't watch us train to death, Jiro said, but the weak tone made people lose confidence at all. All the female voices suddenly showed despair. On the other side, the boys are also grimacing. Hell-style special training, and it will be strengthened. They can no longer imagine how cruel the training is. Everyone, no matter how bleak life is, we need to face it calmly. Cheer up. Let the storm come more violently. We are not afraid. Li Tian stood in front of everyone, pouring chicken soup with a serious expression. Come on, he's very happy, as you wish. A faint voice came from the corridor window on the second floor. Everyone looked up, only to see the back of Aizawa Shota leaving. Everyone was dumbfounded, and Li Tian was no exception. As you wish? What do you mean? Did I make any wish just now? Li Tian blinked, turned to look at the crowd and asked. Li Tian saw a total of 20 people in Class A, 19 of them went crazy, and all roared and rushed towards Li Tian. Li Tian, take your life. It doesn't matter about me, it's not my fault, it's Tokyomi's fault. Looking at the crowd who rushed into the camp fighting. In the open space in front of the camp, the Mandalay cat and the North American shorthair cat looked at each other. The students in class are full of energy. There's still some leather. Not artificial leather, it's real leather. After the smelly people took a shower and cleaned up, they put on new clothes and came out one by one, and began to help prepare dinner. It is said to help prepare dinner, but in fact the main force is the Mandalay cat and the North American shorthair cat, and the boys who have never cooked can only wash the vegetables and fight, and only Li Tian, with his knife skills, he got a job as a vegetable cutter. As for cooking, I think Li Tian, who is the most full-bodied, can make exquisite side dishes. In the kitchen. Dong 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 dong. The sound of cutting vegetables was almost continuous, and the ingredients on the chopping board were completely processed almost instantly. Such beautiful knife skills. I have been cooking for more than 10 years, and I am ashamed that I can't compare to a student like you in terms of knife skills. In the kitchen, the Mandalay cat praised Li Tian's knife skills while cooking. Road. There, I only have knife skills. Li Tian said modestly, put the ingredients on the plate, and took out another ingredient to start processing. Student Li Tian, your knife skills are so good, are you planning to become a professional hero who uses knives as weapons in the future? Mandalay cat asked curiously. No, I don't plan to use any weapons in the future, and they won't be very useful in battle. Li Tian shook his head, the knife skills are good, just because I often handle ingredients, and I still have some confidence in the control of my body. Weapons are not easy to use in battle. The Mandalay cat on the side raised her brows. This was the first time she had heard such a statement. And Li Tian didn't talk nonsense. He who uses the speed force to fight is really not very good at using weapons. Even if it is the sharpest sword, if it is not so sharp that it can cut anything in half, then using the speed force to accelerate to 200 times the speed of swinging the knife, and the powerful anti-shock force to cut anything, will definitely make Li Tian to the hand trembled into an internal injury. Not to mention sticks and the like that need to be smashed. One stick down will hurt the enemy 10,000 and self-damage 9,000. It is better to simply use fists. With a shock-absorbing boxer, Rakido can play at least a big book without serious injury. Okay, the processing is complete. Looking at the empty vegetable basket, Li Tian said as he put down the knife. So fast. The Mandalay cat was taken aback, chatting, but she didn't even notice when. I haven't even finished this dish, yet all the ingredients for the rest are already prepared. Guangtai. The ingredients here are running out. Go and bring in the vegetables from outside. The Mandalay cat shouted towards the outside. Li Tian, who was about to leave, paused. And also. After a while, a child who looked like 6 or 7 years old walked in pushing a big cardboard box, which was full of various vegetables. Student Li Tian, the others have already left, and I will leave the heavy responsibility of washing the vegetables to you, said the Mandalay cat unceremoniously. Li Tian's expression froze. This woman is not polite at all. Watching the other party seriously making his dinner. Leave it to me. Li Tian agreed with a smile without any hesitation. For everyone who is tired all day, a decent dinner is definitely no less than the cooking skills of Hero Lunch Rush in Shangying Canteen on weekdays. Sure enough, when you are tired and hungry, drink red wine. It tastes delicious. Spa. Great, there is actually a hot spring. So comfortable. In the hot spring pool filled with white air, the boys blushed when they heard the clear sound of playing and splashing water next to the wooden wall. It doesn't matter what you eat, to put it bluntly, it's just to fill your stomach. After a hard day's work, this moment is the most enjoyable. Putao relaxed. Eavesdropping on the wooden wall, the voice over there. Mineta-san. Where are you talking to yourself? Lu Jiyu asked while looking at Putao strangely. Didn't you hear it? The voice from the other side of the wall. This time the bathing time of boys and girls is not staggered. If it's not an accident, it's the relaxation benefits that Mr. Aizawa specially prepared for us, Putao said. The sacred missionary. The benefit specially prepared by Mr. Aizawa? Everyone looked at Mineta in astonishment. How could they explain it like this? Sure enough. Putao, get out of the group. Stop, Mineta-san. What you are doing now is an insult to your female classmates and your own personality. This is an extremely shameful behavior. Iida stood up and hurriedly stepped forward to stop. However, at this time, the speed at which the grapes burst out is unimaginable. Grape. Things like walls, if they are not for transcendence, are meaningless. Plus Ultra's unremitting progress will never end. Duck. Be honest with me. Li Tian pressed the grapes into the hot spring helplessly. You bastard, you'll make our class a lose face. Grape. Grr. Li Tian, thank you. Be sure to keep a close eye on Mineta. The girls shouted out one after another, not to mention hearing Mineta's excited roar here, and based on Putao's performance on weekdays, they guessed this kind of thing. The girls over there have already taken precautions. Don't worry, I won't let this guy have a chance to pass. Li Tian shouted with a smile. Grape. Grr. Mr. Mingtai, we will keep an eye on this guy. You can come down and take a bath together. Li Tian shouted at Mingtai, who was standing in the middle of the wooden wall. Cut. I don't want to be with guys like you who only shout to be hero. Gang Tai, who just poked his head over the wooden wall, snorted coldly, then turned his head and went down to leave. Li Tian, who is that kid? On the side, Green Valley asked curiously. He had noticed the little child a long time ago. From the very beginning, he followed the Mandalay cat and the North American short-hair cat, and looked at them with disgust in his eyes. It's Mandalay cat's nephew. Li Tian said casually. It is said that the parents are Hero, who died 2 years ago. Then they became disgusted with Hero, and even hated us those who want to be Hero. Hearing Li Tian's introduction, everyone in the hot spring was startled for a moment, and then all fell into silence. It's not just sympathy for Kangta, but a problem that has to be faced. The death of the professional hero. Grape. Grr. Oops, I forgot Mineta. Li Tian was taken aback, and quickly let go of Putao's hand. Putting his head out of the hot spring, Putao gasped heavily with a saved face. I'm sorry. I just chatted, and I forgot about you. Li Tian didn't apologize at all, as to why he wasn't sincere. Bastard Li Tian, it's not fair that you are the only one who can see it. Putao yelled at Li Tian immediately after recovering. Nice speed is so fast, I can't be caught by anyone. Let's see if people find it. How is it possible, you think I'm you? Li Tian roared with black hair. I don't care. Why is only one person able to see it? It's not fair. Putao lay on the edge of the hot spring pool, and immediately rolled around. And when they heard Putao's words, the other people on the side already looked skeptical. Even the noise of the girls next door was gone. Don't think that if you muddy the water, I will let you go. Li Tian raised Putao's righteous words and said. So that's it. Mineta-san just wants to create chaos, and then find an opportunity to act. Iida said with a sudden expression of Ming-Wu. As expected of Mineta, who has a cleverness at the critical moment, he can come up with a plan so quickly after being soaked in a hot spring. Shiro said with emotion on his face. Undoubtedly have this right to speak. And the other boys looked at the grapes in Li Tian's hand with dazed expressions. Oops, I was found out. Putao was in a cold sweat, feeling completely hopeless. On the other side, the girls also breathed a sigh of relief. And thanks to Li Tian's character on weekdays, although they were a little worried, the girls still felt relieved and soaked in the hot spring. And Li Tian also breathed a sigh of relief at this time. Almost turned yellow and leaked his crotch. The next day. 5:30. What? The people who couldn't even open their eyes were forced to wake up and gathered at the gate of the camp. This time, even Li Tian was completely like the others. Insufficient sleep. As always, the strongest villain of the protagonist. No one. Good morning, students. The official intensive training will start today. The purpose of this training is to enhance everyone's quirks ability so that we can get the temporary license next month. Aizawa Shota is still of the face looks sleep deprived. Although the original plan was to proceed gradually according to your physical growth cycle, but time is running out, so there is an enhanced version of forest training this time. Enhanced quirks? Except for Li Tian and Yi Yin, the other students were a little dazed. Isn't quirks something that will become stronger as time goes by? How to exercise? From Bakugo. Throw this. Aizawa Shota originally planned to throw the softball in his hand at Li Tian, but then thought that Li Tian had far surpassed the terrifying speed when he entered school, and then silently threw softball goes to Bakugo. As this? From the entrance test? Bakugo was taken aback. That's right. Use this to test your growth during this period. Aizawa Shota took out the counter and said lightly, I remember that when I entered school, Bakugo's score was 705.5 meters. I don't know how much you have grown now. How much? Hey. Bakugo grinned, took the softball from Aizawa Shota, and stretched his arms and legs. 3 months have experienced so many things, Bakugo, you must at least throw a 1 kilometer. It's up to you, Bakugo. Standing aside, looking at Bakugo who was preparing for the action, everyone joked, only Li Tian and Aizawa Shota showed a sinister smile. Sonnet. Boom. Accompanied by a loud explosion, the softball was ejected from Bakugo's palm in an instant, blasting away towards the distance. 750.9. The result showed on the counter in Aizawa Shota's hand. Immediately, everyone present, whether they were students or teachers, became astonished. 750.9 meters. How is it possible? However, everyone in class was amazed that Bakugo's performance improved so little, while Li Tian and Aizawa Shota were amazed how Bakugo's progress could be so large. How come? Bakugo looked astonished. 750.9 meters, he only improved 45 meters from the beginning of school. It's unexpected, Bakugo, you have improved so much. Aizawa Shota said in a low voice, frowning. Improved so much. Aizawa-sensei, do you call this how much improved? Ashido Mina jumped out suddenly, shouting exaggeratedly. Of course I have made a lot of progress. According to my original estimation, Bakugo's progress in these 3 months should not exceed 10 meters. Aizawa Shota said lightly, you may have experienced a lot in these 3 months, but the progress is even greater. Mostly it is experience, spirit and technique, and then physical growth. As for quirks, Bakugo, you can grow 45 meters, it is really amazing. Hearing Aizawa Shota's words, everyone was speechless, and at the same time it was hard to accept. In short, starting today, we will strengthen everyone's quirks. This process will definitely make everyone feel miserable. I hope everyone, try not to die. Aizawa Shota showed a sinister look on his face smile. Following behind Aizawa Shota, everyone walked to the training ground. I remembered. In the middle of the crowd, Li Tian, who was deep in thought, was startled suddenly, with a look of surprise on his face. He finally thought of it, thought of the reason why Bakugo's quirks improved so much. Bakugo was attacked by Yin Weiyong once before, and he seemed to have said at that time that he could feel that his quirks had improved. Li Tian thought to himself, it should be that time. It's increased by 45 meters, which is much better than the original 5 meters. Li Tian looked at Bakugo with emotion. Bakugo, you should thank me well. The human body's muscle fibers will tear after a lot of exercise, and they will become stronger and stronger after recovery. The same is true for quirks. As long as they are used continuously, they will become stronger. Otherwise, the legs will be strengthened, so. I want to exercise quirks, there is only one thing to do. Break the limit. The mobilized type with an upper limit of ability should try its best to raise the upper limit. The alien type and other composite types should further exercise the quirks organs they spawned, and those with obvious weaknesses should try their best to make up for it, and those with great power that are difficult to finally control should be it's about trying to control, and purely padded quirks are about tearing up the muscles. This is probably the exercise that you will do this week. Aizawa Shota took the lead and explained lightly. Ms. Aizawa, can you be more specific? I still don't understand. Asui raised his hand and asked. After thinking for a while, Aizawa Shota nodded and said, taking your training as an example, in addition to exercising the muscles of the body, it is probably to wrap your tongue around a weight to exercise Rakido and try to make your tongue longer and longer special training. Doesn't it sound difficult? Ashido scratched her head strangely, she thought it would really be hell. However, only Asui's face turned pale. What does it mean to wrap the tongue around a heavy object to see if it can grow longer? That's called pulling, tongue pulling, and it's punishment, not training. Thinking of the pain when he accidentally stretched his tongue too much or rolled up something too heavy, Asui's face turned pale at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ashido, in addition to the usual physical exercise, it is probably a special training that releases acid continuously throughout the day, and then makes the skin more resistant to corrosion and can use more strong acid. Maybe also see if it can increase the concentration of your acid. Aizawa Shota said blankly. All day. Ashido screamed, with a frightened look on his face, I'm going to die, I'm definitely going to die then. This time, instead, the other students looked at Ashido without knowing why. That's right. That's what it means. Aizawa Shota said without any waves. Maybe in your opinion, other people's training is a bit ordinary, and you even feel that it is the ability that quirks already has. What kind of training is it? But only you who have quirks can understand how painful this hellish special training is. Listening to Aizawa Shota's words, everyone present thoughtfully looked at Asui's pale face, and Ashido, who was terrified, seemed to understand the meaning of this training. Not only to strengthen everyone's quirks, but also to check for omissions and make up for weaknesses. To become a hero, I dare not say that you must have a decathlon, but you must not have too obvious weaknesses, just like what Aizawa Shota once said, you cannot become a hero if you only have one skill. No matter what time it is, strengthening strengths and making up for weaknesses is always the only way to become stronger. It's here, backquote, while everyone was still thinking, Aizawa Shota stopped in his tracks. It turned out that before they knew it, everyone followed Aizawa Shota out of the jungle and came to a forest and stone area. How slow. Eraser, we have been waiting for a long time, Mandalay Cat complained. In the open space, all the members of the hero group Pussycat have already arrived. In addition to the Mandalay Cat and the North American Shorthair Cat that met yesterday, there is also the one who was caught together with the North American Shorthair Cat in the last Osaka port incident. Ragdoll cats, muscular and cute male tigers with completely different genders and styles of painting, and all members of the hero group Pussycat are here. The training of the students is up to you, Aizawa Shota said lightly. Leave it to us, we will never let anyone go, don't worry. The Mandalay Cat immediately showed a big smile to everyone. This is somewhat ambiguous. The corners of Li Tian's mouth twitched slightly. Everyone, come to me to get your training plan and training props, and then go to the terrain suitable for everyone to start training. The cart came from the side. Our training plan. Feeling apprehensive, everyone walked towards the North American Shorthair Cat quickly. Do you keep running and exercising with quirks? Li Tian looked at the training plan in his hand, scratching his chin thoughtfully. It seems that the Shangying School's views on the training methods are similar to my own, Li Tian muttered in his heart. Indeed, his speed force only needs to keep running, and the speed will naturally become faster and faster. As for the development of tricks and the use of speed force, this, except for Li Tian himself, no one else can make plans for Li Tian. At most they can only give certain suggestions, but Shangying's school spirit is famously free. In addition to helping to exercise various basic abilities, the use of moves can only guide one direction at most, rather than directly telling you how to improve. Ah. It's not fair. Suddenly, Putao accidentally glanced at the training plan in Li Tian's left hand on his waist and shouted, Why Li Tian, your training is just running, I want to have my hair cut out. Putao shouted with a grieved face. His training plan is to constantly pull out the globular sticky grapes on his head, and then exercise his scalp so that it will not bleed. Just thinking about this plan makes him shudder. However, at this time, Li Tian actually saw the running plan in Li Tian's hands, and naturally, dissatisfaction erupted. Just running? Ida's shout immediately spread to the ears of the surrounding people. Everyone who was looking at the devil-like training plan in their hands suddenly stared at Li Tian with wide eyes. Well, Iida-kun was an exception. Do you think it's easy for me to run? Li Tian looked at the jealous Putao and said angrily. Isn't that easy? Li Tian, your quirks run so fast and easy after you activate them, and it looks like my plan there, which is simply inhumane. Putao bit the training plan in his hand, with a grievance on his face. Hearing Putao's words, several people who looked like hell at the training plan looked at Li Tian with envy. For example, Aoyama Yuga. Let him keep prolonging the time of the naval laser, let him get used to the feeling of stomach pain and diarrhea, can he still get used to such things? A mobile toilet, is this telling him not to waste time? Another example is Kaminari, who even asked him to hold a super powerful generator wire, saying that he wanted to exercise and expand his storage capacity. Why don't you find him a thunderbolt and kill him? At this time, the few people who thought their training plan was relatively easy stepped back and dared not speak. For example, Sato and Yaoyorozu Wan just launch quirks while eating. In their own opinion, isn't this hell at all? For example, Yi Yin, looking at the training plan in her hand that hides her body to disrupt other training, and then cannot be discovered. She feels that if her training plan is exposed, she may be beaten by the group. The same is true for Iida, looking at the training in his hands that is similar to Li Tian's body training plus running training. No matter how upright he is still shrunk back with the training plan at this time. Looking at the envious group of people, Li Tian was speechless. This group of guys think too simply. Hey, Did you forget what Mr. Aizawa said just now? Maybe you hurry up and my training is ordinary and simple, but in fact, he is indeed very simple. Li Tian spread his hands, said with a smile on his face. Everyone blinked and looked at Li Tian. When the first part of the sentence came out, they still thought about it. Maybe they really misunderstood. Think carefully, is it really tiring to run 10 times all day? However, as soon as the second half of the sentence came out, everyone couldn't react and was dumbfounded, and almost forgot to be angry. Haha, I won't tease you. Li Tian laughed and said, if you feel that I run easily, I can apply to Mr. Aizawa. If any one of you can let me carry it on my back running, how about skipping today's training? Really? Putao's eyes lit up instantly, you can count on your words. Of course. Li Tian raised his eyebrows, and a malicious smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Reminder in advance, my running is really not that simple. Haha, idiots don't agree. Someone is carrying it, and there is no need for training. Putao laughed suddenly, and was about to come over. However, Yi Yin on the side looked at Putao with pity. Her eyes were extremely kind. Just like looking at someone else's stupid grandson. Among the students present, she is probably the only one who understands a little bit about Li Tian's ability. The truth. Mr. Aizawa, Putao is going to let me run for a day, what do you think? Li Tian looked at Aizawa Shota who was walking by, and asked. Don't make trouble. Are you trying to turn Putao into a fool? Aizawa Shota glared at Li Tian angrily. He is also a traitor who knows a little about Li Tian's quirks. Li Tian chuckled, without explaining, instantly activated the super speed force, and flew away. Not far away, the puppet cat who had been smiling and watching this side was suddenly startled, and looked at the place where Li Tian disappeared just now, with a look of astonishment. Unbelievable. He is, wait. The moment Li Tian left, Putao just wanted to speak, and then saw Aizawa Shota at the side, and swallowed the words immediately. Aizawa Shota looked at Putao's frustrated face, and stared at him with bloodshot eyes. And you, Mineta, after you get the training plan, train honestly, don't play tricks all day long. The kind of final exams things can only happen once, don't think every time you can get what you want. If the passing score is 60 points, you are 61 points. After speaking, Aizawa Shota turned and left directly. But Putao looked at Aizawa Shota who was leaving with an aggrieved expression on his face. It was Li Tian who said it, so why scold him? Don't think too much, Mr. Aizawa is doing it for your own good. Yi Yin looked at the situation and said quickly. Not to comfort the grapes, but to explain. Li Tian left without saying a word, and Aizawa Shota also left without explaining, so it was natural for her to appease the students around. Li Tian's quirks are very special. They are not purely fast, but they give the illusion of somatosensory time after running. Yi Yin hastily opened his mouth to explain what he usually heard from Li Tian. Illusion of somatosensory time. All the people present were taken aback. Such a high-ranking term made them very dazed, and they all looked at the little million children's shoes of knowledge Xiaomiaoke. And Yaoyorozu Wan also lived up to expectations, opened his mouth and started to explain. The so-called somatosensory time is the speed of time passing subjectively felt by the human body, and each person's perceived time passing speed and the real time passing speed are generally different at different times according to different mental states and physical states. Everyone. Looking at a group of question mark faces, Yaoyorozu Wan's face turned black. It's that when you play games, you feel that the time passes quickly, but when you study in class, you feel that the time passes very, very slow. Moved. I see. Everyone suddenly realized. That's right, that's what it means. Yi Yin also nodded hastily, with a dazed look on his face. Yaoyorozu Wan, sister, your reaction is wrong. After Li Tian's quirks is activated, this kind of somatosensory time will appear. If you run continuously for an hour, it feels the same as our continuous running for more than 100 hours. It is very boring. Yi Yin nodded repeatedly and said, running for an hour is like running for 100 hours straight? Everyone who didn't know why looked confused. So that's how it is. Little mentally handicapped, bah, the little think tank Lagu finally came online. Because Li Tian's speed is too fast, it will cause the illusion that all of us are slowing down, and then to a certain extent, it will affect Li Tian's somatosensory time. In order to get closer, instead of ignoring the real time in reality, and instinctively adopting the meaning of somatosensory time? Shrimp and shrimp. Everyone who was about to figure it out was stunned again when they heard a series of magic sounds from LVGU. If that guy runs with that kid for a day, that kid won't just experience the same day as we saw, but will think that he and that guy have been running non-stop for 100 days. Bakugo on the side, he curled his lips and said something disdainful, then walked away holding his training props. So that's how it is. Everyone looked stunned and understood. The simple and crude explanation is so easy to understand. Hey, whose your name is that kid? I have a name. Putao suddenly reacted, and shouted at Bakugo, who was leaving with a dissatisfied expression. You. Hurry up and train. Aizawa Shota's angry shout immediately made these people tremble, and the group of people who were chatting and watching the excitement just now dispersed in a crowd, and took their own cultivation props and rushed to their training ground. Cut. Bakugo completely ignored the noise behind him, holding the props for cultivation, and clenched the training plan in his hand. His eyes were extremely firm. He still vividly remembers the scene of the previous test. The improvement of only 45 meters made him extremely humiliated, especially when he thought of the speed that completely surpassed Li Tian, who was unknown at the beginning of school, and the unacceptable speed. The strong, smelly long. Be stronger. Must be stronger than everyone. Bakugo roared in his heart. However, unlike everyone in class who finally started to move and was full of energy, the puppet cat on the other side fell into silence. Is it him? Is it really him? That vicious villain, that Savitar. How could it be just a student? That's right. I should have read it wrong. That little guy can't be Savitar's. Idiot. What are you thinking? How could a student be Savitar? The puppet cat stood where it was, entangled in its heart, but its eyes were fixed on the place where Li Tian disappeared, in a daze. Muppet cat? Muppet cat? Muppet cat? On the side, the Mandalay cat looked at the dazed ragdoll and couldn't help but wondered. Muppet, the babies have already started exercising. If you don't start quirks quickly and start working, what are you doing in a daze? Uh-oh. Woke up by the Mandalay cat, the puppet cat also quickly suppressed the shock in his heart, forced himself to look normal, and showed a slightly stiff smile. No, nothing, I'll start now. Although I was extremely shocked, I have been a professional hero for more than 10 years. After suppressing the shock in my heart, it will not affect the next work. I directly activated quirks and kept an eye on the 10 people in front of me. 9 people. It's just. The panic and entanglement flashed in his eyes from time to time, and he couldn't avoid the Mandalay cat's gaze at all. She doesn't seem to be right. The Mandalay cat frowned, but it obviously didn't want to say it, and the puppet cat who had already started working didn't say anything. Let's make a good fuss about 10 landlords. On the other side, Li Tian, who was running fast, obviously couldn't have imagined that after I was found by the villain who was possessed by the soul in my island, I was going to wash my hands in the gold basin, and I was once again attacked by the puppet cat. Searching quirks was able to recognize him without Savitar's armor. It's not Li Tian's carelessness, but no one would have imagined that quirks, a villain possessing a soul, can also see the essence through the body and recognize people from the perspective of the soul, and the puppet cat is also mysterious, and can turn to the person who is covered in armor and even made a certain height camouflage will be recognized. One must know that in order to prevent Li Tian from being discovered by quirks like clairvoyant eyes, every time he disguised himself as Savitar, he still didn't forget to use the Speed Force to blur his face. Even in this case, Li Tian would be coincidentally discovered by ignoring his means of concealing his identity, and he had only been Savitar for a month, and the number of appearances did not even break 3 digits. This is also the case. Beep the dog. Otto, if Li Tian learned about this matter, he must be speechless. This is life. The small episode did not affect everyone's forest training. Even after the 20 students in Class B have doubled the number of Hell-style special training, Ragdoll has dutifully captured the details of everyone's training, and gave feedback when applying. However, with things in my heart, I just didn't show any smiling faces. Others may not be able to see it, but as comrades in arms who have cooperated for more than 10 years, the 3 of them, the Mandalay cat, the North American shorthair cat and the tiger, can basically see clearly. However, they didn't ask about the time and place. They just looked at each other a few times, and they all made a decision to ask about it tonight. Time passed by every minute and every second. At 7:30 in the evening, the Hell-style training for the whole day was finally called off. After receiving the notice from Aizawa Shota, when he returned to the camp, Li Tian also showed a rare look of exhaustion. He had never run for more than 10 hours at a stretch, and this time he really almost threw up. It's not because of the problem of the somatosensory time difference. Unlike other people, as a speedster, the Speed Force can help Li Tian suppress that disordered somatosensory time, so Li Tian's consciousness feels that he only ran 12 times, only 3 hours. 12 or 13 hours is not a lot, especially with the speed of Li Tian. Mach 6. Li Tian's current speed has steadily surpassed Mach 6, exceeding 2,000 meters per second, reaching an astonishing speed of 2,141 meters per second, 3,600 seconds in an hour. Li Tian started running around 6 o'clock in the morning. It didn't stop until 7:30 in the evening, that is, 12.5 hours, a total of 45,000 seconds. And 2,141 meters per second, and ran for a full 45,000 seconds, which means that Li Tian ran a total of ** meters today, that is, 96,345 kilometers. The equator is only as long as 40,000 kilometers, and the distance Li Tian ran in one day is enough to run around the Earth twice, which is more than a half. It's okay if the place is big enough, you can see the scenery. But here is only a little big place for Li Tian to run, a jungle the size of a palm. Li Tian has walked around it countless times today, and now he can take it for granted that he knows better than the four of Pussycat. The forest of their home is gone. Mr. Aizawa, let's talk about it. Can I run in another place tomorrow? This place is too small. I can't run at all. Leaving with a depressed face, he handed a small computer in his hand to Aizawa Teoshin. Of course, this machine is just a pedometer or tracker, a super-sensitive pedometer that has been slightly improved to keep up with Li Tian's speed. Looking at the number of Li Tian's steps fed back from the pedometer, even if it was expected, the corners of Aizawa Shota's mouth twitched, and he shook his head decisively at Li Tian and refused. No. This is a private territory where you can use quirks. Out of here, quirks are prohibited without a hero license. Although he had expected it, Li Tian still had a look of helplessness on his face, especially when he thought that he had to run for 5 full days. He almost vomited. Okay. Li Tian was stunned suddenly, and from the corner of his eye, he accidentally glanced at the puppet cat who was looking at him with a complicated face. Before Li Tian could ask a question, when he turned his head to look at the puppet cat, the other party dodged directly. Kai Lai left in a hurry, which made Li Tian a little puzzled. Is this what happened? At night, the bright moon hangs high, the sky is full of stars, and there are not many dark clouds. Forest training camp. As the night approached, everyone in class rarely fell asleep. After all, there are 20 students in a class, 13 of them are still studying, and only 7 pass children's shoes who can sleep peacefully, but only 4 of them are sleeping soundly in Datong shop. Li Tian is missing. Muppet Cat, what happened to you during the day? You have been out of your mind. In the room, the Mandalay Cat asked with a frown. No. The puppet cat was about to speak. Don't deny it, I've seen it too, you've been out of sorts all day today. The North American Shorthair Cat said directly. A look of hesitation appeared on the puppet cat's face. She didn't know whether to talk about it or not. Gigi, what's the matter? Mandalay Cat asked seriously with a condensed expression. Originally, she thought it was not a big deal, but the hesitant appearance of the puppet cat made her worried. The struggling look in the puppet cat's eyes flashed away, and then he lowered his head and said in a low voice, I seem to have seen that person today. Both the North American Shorthair and the Mandalay Cat frowned. That person. Who was that person? Without the need for the two of them to ask, the puppet cat then whispered, it's the underground hero who was sentenced to villain in the Osaka Bay incident last time, Savitar. 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 The Mandalay Cat and the North American Shorthair Cat exclaimed at the same time, their faces full of disbelief. Wait a minute. The Mandalay Cat's face suddenly changed, and it looked at the puppet cat with its head down and asked in a dignified voice, Chizzy, you couldn't be among the students who saw Savvy Tower. The puppet cat hesitated a little, then nodded. No way. Among those babies, is there Sawada? Who is it? The scene of this is still deeply engraved in her mind, and after a little recollection, it is extremely clear. On the other hand, the Mandalay Cat is different from the two of them. Although they learned of the terrifying record of Savitar afterwards, compared with what they saw with their own eyes, the sense of shock was weaker after all. After being shocked, he began to think about it. If Savitar is among the students, then the Mandalay Cat frowned and began to think carefully, based on the details the ragdoll cat saw during the day, and the quirk's ability exposed by Savitar. It's him. Mandalay Cat's eyes suddenly lit up, thinking of a matching figure. Gigi, that Savitar is Jenkson Li Tian, the Mandalay Cat said directly. The puppet cat lowered its head and responded softly. No way. The North American Shorthair Cat was astonished, and couldn't help but think of Jenkson Li Tian in the mouth of the Mandalay Cat, with an unbelievable look in his eyes. You mean the class A that erasers value the most, the strongest baby is Savitar? In Class A, there are only 2 quirks who are close to the abilities exposed by Savitar, that is, Genshuan Li Tian and Green Valley Izuku, but judging from today's training, Green Valley Izuku is undoubtedly not as strong as Savitar this kind of strength, so it can only be Genshuan Li Tian, the Mandalay cat said with a frown. The North American Shorthair cat opened its mouth, but didn't say anything, and there was hesitation in its eyes. Although it is unbelievable, but compared to her own doubts, she still trusts Pussycat's eye puppet cat more than 10 years ago. Some camouflaged quirks can change their appearance, but they can't hide from the eyes of the puppet cat. Muppet cats, quirks search. All the information of the people they see is clear, even the location and weakness. The upper limit is 100 people. If it is seen by the eyes of the puppet cat, it is impossible to hide from the eyes of the puppet cat, let alone a mere armor or some small tricks of disguise, even if it is plastic surgery and sex change. This was the only confidence they had when they were struggling with whether to take action against Savitar when they were just rescued. But they never imagined that, in order to repay their life-saving grace, they had already decided not to search for Savitar, but Savitar himself appeared in front of their eyes. This is too coincidental. At the same time, the North American Shorthair cat also understands what the puppet cat is struggling with. How about telling them about their discovery of Savitar? Just thinking about it, she immediately became entangled. It is the job of the professional hero to discover the hidden identity of the villain and report it, but that person is the savior of both of them, and although the other party's methods are cruel, they are not true vicious villain. The North American Shorthair cat looked at the ragdoll cat with a tangled face, and the two looked at each other. The ragdoll cat instantly understood that the other party had the same tangled concerns as itself, and then looked at the Mandalay cat at the same time. The two of them were doomed not to make that decision because of Savis' saved status. The Mandalay cat is also frowning at this time. She obviously noticed the entanglement between the puppet cat and the North American Shorthair cat and the reason for the tangle. Frowning, the Mandalay cat said in a low voice, "We don't want to get involved in this matter, and we also said last time that we will never take action against Savitar. Tell Eraserhead about this matter." Tell Eraserhead. The ragdoll and the North American Shorthair looked at each other in blank dismay. In fact, this decision was no different from reporting Savitar's identity. Well, tell Eraserhead that he is Savitar's teacher, and don't tell him who to tell. After the Mandalay cat made a decision, it didn't hesitate any longer, and was ready to launch quirks and call Aizawa Shota over. Outside the window of the three-person room, Li T sat on a corner of the eaves and looked up at the bright moon in the sky, with a speechless expression on his face. Although he faintly sensed something was wrong with the puppet cat tonight, but he never imagined that he actually discovered his identity as Savitar. This is Sao Dan's life. Was his disguise really that bad? Otherwise, why did he only debut in January, and his true identity was discovered by villain and professional hero successively? I'm really ashamed of the time traveler. Li Tian's face was full of lovelessness. After Wang Tian sighed, Li Tian didn't have the idea of murdering people. After all, he still has a bottom line. Besides, even if the officials know his real body, what can he do? He can still mobilize an army of professional hero to catch him. Anyway, his identity has already been discovered by the villain, and it will be a matter of time before his real identity is discovered by the professional hero. Not a bad thing. It's just, Shangying might not be able to stay any longer. Li Tian sighed slightly, constantly thinking about the pros and cons and how to deal with it. With a flash of his figure, he activated his superhuman speed and dashed back to the boys' Datongpu dormitory. Got into the bed and fell asleep beautifully. What Li Tian didn't know was, after he left, the Mandalay cat in the room breathed a sigh of relief. He's gone. The Mandalay cat spoke in a spiritual dialogue. Call. The ragdoll and the North American Shorthair let out a sigh of relief at the same time, and collapsed directly on the floor. That's right, from the beginning to the end, the three of them were acting, a big show for Li Tian. Mandalay cats, quirks telepathy. If they can't even sense people, how can they telepathize? So when Li Tian appeared, she had already found Li Tian squatting in the corner, and then instantly formulated the following: the three of them used the bait plan as bait, and telepathically told the ragdoll and the North American Shorthair. It's finally gone. I'm already in a cold sweat, the North American Shorthair said helplessly. Who isn't? The puppet cat also looked hopeless. This is the first time I hate my quirks so much. Find out who is bad, find out who is good. Okay. Why don't you two be so exaggerated? The Mandalay cat said angrily. Although Savitar's methods are a bit cruel, I have never heard of him treating innocent people or professional hero. The news of the attack, are you so afraid? That's Mandalay. You have never seen the scene where that guy made a move. The North American Shorthair cat sat up directly, and said with an exaggerated expression, "Ask Gigi, if you think about the scene of that night now, it will make your heart ache. Chilling makes people tremble." Ragdoll Cat nodded approvingly and said, "Especially thinking that he listened to our corner just now, my little heart is still beating now. If you don't jump, you're dead." The Mandalay Cat looked at the two with contempt. "Okay, the test has been tested, and the next step will be the same as what was discussed before. Keep this matter a secret." The North American Shorthair Cat asked. "Of course. Isn't this what we discussed? I'll tell him telepathically." The Mandalay Cat nodded. "Wait. Tell me tomorrow. As for tonight, just scare him as the price of scaring us." The Puppet Cat directly raised its hand to stop it, and said viciously, "I agree." The North American Shorthair Cat nodded directly. Then, "Okay." The Mandalay Cat hesitated for a while, and there would be no problem for one night, so she nodded and agreed. After all, she also has a strong desire for revenge in her heart. "Yes. Bastard saw Wada. Just wait for me, and I will let you know what will happen to you if you offend me." In the dim room, the possessed soul sat in front of a computer, with a ferocious resentment on his face. "My name is Koshibori Hirao, and although I am not quirkless, Quirks is just an ordinary, reading, who can directly embody the pictures in his mind on paper, so he has become an ordinary manga artist. Recently, he was distressed because his new comic was squeezed out by a hero comic out of interest and was cut in half. Or, just try the hero-themed manga that was not finished last time. A sudden idea appeared in Koshibori Hirao's mind, not to mention, it was different from the previous setting. Well, it is different from a blank mind, but this time his mind is full of inspiration. The protagonist is set as a quirkless boy who meets All Might by chance and is admitted to the Hero Academy. With such a seemingly random thought, Hirao Koshibori's mind burst out with inspiration, and pictures appeared in his mind one after another. No one knows that on the Shinkansen, a man who looks like an ordinary office worker seems to be in a daze, but his mind is full of brainstorming and inspiration. One by one, the pictures kept appearing. "Wow, seriously." Suddenly, an exclamation sounded in the tram. It directly disrupted Koshibori Hirao's brainstorming, causing his brows to frown involuntarily. The inspiration in his mind suddenly dissipated, and he could no longer find the feeling of springing up with ideas just now. This made him angry. For a cartoonist, inspiration is everything. But he is after all an outstanding young manga artist who is tolerant, nurturing, moral. To the screaming girl. "That girl looks to be 12 or 13 years old, she should be just a junior high school student, holding a mobile phone with a..." Koshibori Hirao was angrily going forward to argue. "What news is this? Crazy. Really? How is it possible? A student can be so powerful?" Around the junior high school girl, passengers of different ages were clamoring with their mobile phones. Koshibori Hirao sat down again. He was not from the heart, but just curious. With so many people exclaiming at the same time, it must not be a single person's problem. There is always only one truth, and there must be some group incident. Edo Kawakoshihori Hirago pushed his reflective glasses, and took out his phone confidently. Really. The moment he turned on the phone, a piece of news popped up forcefully. "This is a hacker?" Koshibori Hirao couldn't help being startled. There has never been such forced entry in normal news, so people with a little brain can easily judge that this is definitely the work of hackers. A hacker compulsively popping news on a phone? Although he hated this villain method very much, Hirao Koshibori couldn't help but became curious, carefully looked at the pop-up news interface and began to read. And as he read, he couldn't help showing a look of surprise on his face. Shocking. The first-year student of Shangying High School is actually a masked hero, bravely broke into the villain group and rescued thousands of girls. Shangying High School principal's office. Mr. Principal frowned as he looked at the news post that popped up on his phone. On June 6, that is, 2 months ago, a major event that should have shocked the whole country happened in Osaka. The police teamed up with Professional Hero to destroy a large villain group engaged in human trafficking and defeated the villain, hundreds of people, rescued thousands of abducted women, and repelled the international villain force Silver Fox who came to buy and sell. But this big event that should have shocked the whole country was handled in a low-key manner. There was almost no disturbance in the country. After my investigation, I found that the reason why the police handled this incident in a low-key manner was that the biggest contribution to destroying this large villain group was not from the police and Professional Hero, but from a borrowed the nameless underground hero. Without support, this nameless hero single-handedly attacked the villain group, fighting against 127 villain alone. After the bloody battle, The villain suffered heavy casualties, and finally only 16 people survived, but the 1,266 abducted women were arrested without any casualties. This is undoubtedly a hero event that deserves to be recorded in history, but the police did not have a hero license, illegally used quirks to hurt people, and the shots were fierce. The detailed process of this incident, and afterwards, the hero was wanted as a villain, which can't help but start questioning the management of quirks. Finally, this hero, Savita, who is defined as villain, is very likely to be a student in the hero department of hero in the first grade of Shangying High School according to the investigation. In order to prevent him from being persecuted, I will not reveal his true identity here. Mr. Principal let out a deep breath, put down his phone, and said with a solemn face, "All Might, what do you think of this hacker revelation?" "I don't believe it." All Might sat in the office, clenched his fists, his face sank. "I don't believe that young Li Tian would do such a thing. This is definitely a villain conspiracy." "It's true. This matter is very likely to be a plot by villain, but we have to guard against how heavy the blow to Shangying will be if this matter is true," Mr. Principal said solemnly. "Although this so-called news is from the beginning to the end, it looks like avenging justice for the nameless hero, Savita. But between the lines, a professional hero can see that it is targeted between the lines." Principal All Might was about to speak with a look of urgency on his face. Mr. Principal raised his hand to stop All Might, and said in a deep voice, "I don't want to believe this kind of thing either. The police have already contacted the hacker hero to set up a special investigation team to start investigating this news. I believe that it will not be long before the identity of the other party can be investigated clearly. As for now, a villain with such skill will definitely not fabricate a fake news out of thin air to make news. Among them, it must be there's something inside that we don't know about." "Principal, what do you mean?" All Might couldn't help but startled. "Right now, student Li Tian is participating in the training camp in the forest, and it is difficult to explain this matter on the phone. So I would like to ask you to go to the remote mountain where the training camp is located to find classmate Li Tian for review activities, and cooperate. The police may hold a rumor and clarification event next," Mr. Principal said in a deep voice. "I see." After a long silence, All Might saw the serious expression on Mr. Principal's face, and replied in a deep voice. Although Li Tian's name did not appear in the news from the beginning to the end, neither Mr. Principal nor All Might mentioned any other student except Li Tian. Although he said, in order to prevent being persecuted, the real identity of the other party will not be revealed, but the sentence of hero in the first grade of hero is almost a naked statement. With a creak, the door of the principal's office was opened and closed, and All Might walked out, ready to go to the deep mountains to find Li Tian. But in the principal's office, Mr. Principal picked up the mobile phone, looked at the detailed process of the police's Osaka Bay incident attached to the news, and looked at the fighting methods of Savitar described in it. Mr. Principal's his complexion became more and more ugly. "This fighting style. Haste hero. Ahahaha, bastard Savitar. No, Jenkson Li Tian is right. I don't know if you will like this gift from me." With a frantic look on his face, Sol looked at the computer that kept copying and sending messages. News broke. That's right. The operation this time was done by himself with the Sol, and it was performed at his home using his own computer, instead of possessing other people to hide behind the scenes. He has no intention of hiding at all. Hey, don't you want to be a hero? Then I will let you be a hero. Even make Shangying, let all your classmates become hero. Unfortunately, everyone shouted hit hero. Ha ha ha. Yang Tian, who possessed a soul and went crazy, laughed. He's crazy. He is really crazy. After his quirks were deactivated, he went completely insane. Even Li Tian didn't expect that his super speed and force lightning would do such great damage to the possessed soul. Although the possessed soul endured the injury and escaped from my island, he fell into a coma for a day and a night after returning, and the next for several days. The spirit was drowsy, and there was severe pain. And the night before, after a week's interval, the spirit found out. His quirks were no longer usable. He is useless. Crazy too. It's not over yet, Jenkson Li Tian. You think I will simply ruin your reputation? No, mixed reputation and reputation. How can it be that simple? I will destroy your name, and I will destroy your life too. Take it away, with a maddened look on his face. Boom. There was a loud bang. Don't move, police. The sound of breaking the door and shouting from the police came directly from the door. At the same time, at the window of the soul-attached soul, a professional hero figure broke through the window directly, rushing in and going under the soul-attached bridge. Kangmu Soul, you are under arrest, the professional hero shouted. But even so, Kang Mu's soul, that is, the possessed soul, is still laughing wildly, with a pair of eyes revealing a chilling mad hatred. Heroes sleep together in the forest, camp. 4 o'clock in the morning. As a heavy mobile phone addict, the first thing Li Tian did after opening his eyes was naturally to take out his mobile phone and start browsing. And that news. This news. Li Tian looked at his mobile phone, frowning, and a haze flashed in his eyes. As far as he knows, the only people who know his identity as Savitar are Pussycat hero and villain. How could you use such a cheap method? Li Tian frowned and muttered to himself. If it was said that before he didn't care whether to admit the identity of Savitar, then now, he can't admit it even if he dies. He is not stupid. If you admit that there are only bad things and no good things, if you don't admit that there are good and bad things, then a fool will admit it. I originally wanted to abandon the identity of Savitar, but it seems that I can't help but carry forward it now. It's really hard work. Li Tian sighed in his heart, got up, changed his clothes, and waited up. At this time, in the Datong shop in the boys' dormitory, except for Li Tian, no one woke up. After all, with yesterday's level of fatigue, not everyone, like Li Tian, undergoes high-intensity training every day, and has an astonishingly strong recovery ability. After getting up, Li Tian didn't have to wait too long. Outside the room, Aizawa Shota walked over with a sullen face. Looking at Li Tian, who was already awake in the room, he recruited Zhaomin. With the speed force activated, Li Tian's figure instantly appeared beside Aizawa Shota. Teacher, I woke up so early. Li Tian greeted with a smile. Seeing Li Tian's appearance, Aizawa Shota frowned, and said in a deep voice, "Did you see the forced pop-up news?" "I see." Li Tian nodded, his expression quite calm. "Is there anything you want to say?" Aizawa Shota led Li Tian to the outside, and said softly. "The clear is from the turbid and the turbid is from the turbid. There is nothing to say." Li Tian looked calm. "You are not surprised that I came to you?" Aizawa Shota said in a deep voice. "Of course not unexpected." Li Tian shook his head, although the news only mentioned the first-year hero students of Shangying High School, but combined with the record above and the detailed process in the police information given, I don't know if there is anyone in Class B who can do it, but class, I am definitely the only one. Aizawa Shota didn't speak. Obviously, he thought the same way, and he also knew very well that no one in Class B could do this. The entire Shangying High School for 1 year, no, the entire Shangying High School including the teachers, only how many can do that? And in the first grade, there is Li Tian alone. By the way, the job of professional hero is really dangerous enough. I haven't even obtained a temporary license. I haven't even performed hero activities a few times before I encountered this kind of thing. As he spoke, Li Tian couldn't help shaking his head, and couldn't help clicking his tongue showing emotion. That's the job of professional hero. But, you are the unlucky one. Aizawa Shota said lightly. It's really unlucky. This kind of thing doesn't happen once or twice in a few years. Li Tian couldn't help laughing. And think about it carefully, he changed into Savitar to fight for righteousness only a few months ago, and he was recognized by the villain-possessed soul in the professional hero combination Pussycat. Think about him. I feel like I have been abandoned by Lady Luck. Even this incident was because he was discovered by the Spirit Rose. Walking in the front, Aizawa Shota watched Li Tian's movements behind him, and couldn't help frowning in his heart. Is it really Li Tian? A haze rose in Aizawa Shota's heart. If this matter didn't make a big fuss, he would know it when he knew it. Even he and Shang Ying could help Li Tian cover up a bit, and educate Li Tian well afterwards. After all, the Osaka Bay incident may be a bit unfamiliar to the public, but it has been spread in the circle of professional hero, and their school and teachers have discussed it more than once or twice in private. Although the casualties of villain it may be a bit tragic, but the battle was resolved within a few minutes, and the fact that the abducted woman was rescued without any casualties, everyone expressed affirmation. But now things are getting bigger. Although it is 4 o'clock in the morning, there are definitely thousands of people who have seen the pop-up news, and it is impossible to catch the words of the culprit in a short time. Maybe there will be troubles, and everyone knows that this kind of big event is not something that their heroic school can cover up. Following behind Aizawa Shota, Li Tian walked out of the camp all the way. In the clearing in front of the camp, all 4 members of Pussycat Hero are here to fight. Eraserhead. The Mandalay cat stepped forward and said in a deep voice. Aizawa Shota shook his head and did not speak. The North American Shorthair, Ragdoll, and Tiger all looked at Li Tian incomparably complicatedly. Student Li Tian, what happened last night was actually just testing you for acting. We didn't really want to tell your teacher that you were Savitar. What about this morning? In Li Tian's mind, the explanation voice of the Mandalay cat suddenly came. This is Quirk's telepathy, the Mandalay cat. Hearing the explanation of the Mandalay cat, he was slightly taken aback, and a smile inevitably rose in his heart. Although Li Tian didn't really care whether the other party said it or not, but he didn't feel betrayed by the rescued person. Very good. But you really misunderstood the person. I'm really not that Savitar. The clear is from the turbid, and the turbid is from the turbid. Li Tian opened his mouth and said, but did not make a sound. But as a professional hero, she can still distinguish things like simple spoken language. The Mandalay cat couldn't help but frown slightly, looking at Li Tian's undisguised distrust. Obviously, she thought Li Tian was just denying it. But at this time, the tiger on the side suddenly stepped forward, looked at Li Tian, bowed deeply and said, "Thank you for saving the ragdoll in the North American Shorthair." Aizawa Shota on the side had question marks on his face. And Li Tian also pretended not to understand whose meaning with a confused look on his face. Tiger, what do you mean? Aizawa Shota asked directly, frowning. 2 months ago, during the Osaka Bay incident, the ragdoll and the North American Shorthair were carelessly caught by the villain, and they were among the 1,266 women who were rescued. Tiger didn't hide anything meaning, but explained in a deep voice. Aizawa Shota couldn't help frowning. He really didn't know about this matter. Then you thanked the wrong person too. I'm really not that Savitar. Li Tian looked at Hu helplessly and said, spreading his hands. Perhaps. Hu paused, and retreated without saying much. That expression obviously confirmed that Li Tian is Sueda. Li Tian saw it clearly. It must be the 3 women from the Pussycat group who told Hu. Compared with Li Tian's struggling words, the other party obviously believed in Ragdoll's Quirk's judgment more. At this time, the voice of the Mandalay cat sounded again in Li Tian's mind. Student Li Tian, please don't worry. Although we Pussycat cannot save you and repay your kindness, we will never reveal the judgment of Ragdoll Cat. This is the promise of our Pussycat group. Hearing the voice of the Mandalay cat in his mind, Li Tian really laughed in his heart, but his face was still innocent, and he opened his mouth to deny it. However, the Mandalay cat didn't pay any attention. Tiger, don't judge this matter prematurely. This is not something we need to think about. The school has contacted me just now, and the police will arrive soon. At that time, they will fully take over this matter. Aizawa Shota said lightly. I see. Hu nodded and didn't say much. Obviously, Mandalay cat has already told him the decision. No, it should be said to tell everyone in the Pussycat group. Obviously they all respect Mandalay cat's decision, and they are tight-lipped about Ragdoll cat's judgment. By the way, Mr. Aizawa, if I leave with the police, what will my classmates do? In that post, it was talking about the first grade of hero in Shangying High School, not me directly. Li Tian was curious. Asked. They will stay and continue the training. However, there will be people from the police staying to supervise the routine interrogation. Until there is no result, this will continue. Aizawa Shota said lightly. Obviously, for this kind of thing for the handling, Aizawa Shota is quite experienced and comes at will. That's it. Li Tian nodded. He thought the forest training was going to be a waste again. Without the League of Villains, if it still fails, then Li Tian will be guilty of a big crime. The time passed by every minute and every second, and they didn't make them wait too long. That is, at around 6 o'clock in the morning, the police helicopter landed in the open space. Except that all might also arrive together, which made Li Tian a little surprised. There was no big disturbance. After leaving 3 or 5 policemen behind, Li Tian boarded the helicopter and left directly.